Welcome, everybody, to the August 17th Missoula City Council meeting. It's 6:03 p.m. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And before we get started, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. All right, Ms. Trimble, if you will do a roll call for us, please.
Right. Roll call, beginning with Anderson.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Krask. Absent. Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
McCoy.
Here.
Melson.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Ponton.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Just a quick note here at the top of the agenda that in our public hearings, council members, you know there are a number of different resolutions relative to adoption of the FY27 city budget. Item 6.2, which is the resolutions levying assessments. The fourth recommended motion, which deals with the downtown business improvement district, will need to be postponed until the next meeting. So we'll just hold it on the agenda. And that's because the formula that calculates utilizing the taxable values for those properties, it's still being calculated and assessed. So the number is not ready to vote on tonight. So Councilor Savage will address this again when we get to that point in the meeting, but I just wanted to mention that at the very top here. Otherwise, everything else we will be forward with. Next up, we have approval of minutes, and we have minutes from August 10th, 2026. Do any council members have any changes or suggested amendments to those minutes? And not seeing any, then those will remain as submitted. Thank you very much. We don't have any special presentations or neighborhood council updates this evening. So we will, before I move into agenda item number 5, I'll mention that we really have one particular item, several different resolutions, but one item for your consideration this evening, and that is the consideration and adoption of the FY 2027 City of Missoula budget. We also do have some items under our consent agenda, but no regular council business, and so that is the extent of our council agenda this evening. All right. So our first item before we get to public hearings is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. And this first period of public comment on items that are not on the agenda is limited to 20 minutes in total, with up to 3 minutes allotted per speaker. Each person may speak once per meeting concerning items that are not on the agenda, and in-person comments will take precedence. Sign up is required and follows a first-come, first-served basis, which I have those in hand here. The second period of public comment on items not on the agenda will follow immediately after the conclusion of all regular business and continue until all comments have been taken. So with that, we'll go ahead and start our public comment for items that are not on the agenda. The person who signed up first has stepped out. I'll just double check. And Mr. No, I just want to make sure that you're here to comment on items that are not on the agenda. Susan Renaud? Okay, great. Got you. All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, so again, and we'll make sure that you have an opportunity, of course, to comment on anything on the agenda when that agenda item comes up. Okay, So we'll go ahead and get started here with public comment for items that are not on the agenda. And Kristen Newman, you're the first on the list. Come on up. And for folks that don't know, I'll go ahead and help you keep time up here with there's a green, yellow, and red. The yellow light goes off when you have 30 seconds left, and the red will signal a signal when we're at 3 minutes. Thank you. Right ahead.
My name's Kristen Newman with Ward 1, or I live in Ward 1. And this is a follow-up to last week's decision on not approving the budget amendment for the ADA coordinator. I submitted a letter over the weekend to council providing some information about that and some of my background, and that wasn't posted on our agenda, so I wanted to let people know that I do have copies of that as well if anybody wants one. But I want to preface really that we are doing a really good job in the city of doing cool ADA stuff. We've got our ramp down to the river. We're doing really great stuff, but what I'm seeing is there's a lot of disconnect internally and within the way different departments work when it comes to facilitating access questions and making sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. And so I was really concerned about the hastiness of the conversation last week. And I want to just read a little section of my letter because it's too long to read here. But the ADA does allow for multiple staff members to coordinate ADA implementation. However, if the city of Missoula does have multiple employees charged with these responsibilities, this is information that should have been made available to you in detail and openly discussed on record on Wednesday's meeting. We should have been able to hear from each departmental designated ADA expert and learn how they actually implement their coordination and remediation efforts within their departments and how they all work together across all departments to ensure efficient and effective ADA implementation citywide. After we heard some vague and convoluted explanations, I have to say that I'm disappointed that council members voted this down before changing the vote to today, because you had the power to defer your vote. And we could have been, more proactive. You could have asked for organizational chart of these subject matter experts. You could ask, how does the city support their professional development? Ask the staff to show you a report on how this current framework, as they described to you, is meeting the obligations effectively. Because most importantly, this has to be defensible. So you have to be confident that your framework is defensible against the requirements that DOJ explained. So this is where my concern is, because it's critical information for all of us to know if this is a defensible system. Otherwise, the city is requiring the taxpayers to carry your continued federal liability risk into the next fiscal year, while it's on record that a breakdown has been existing. So I think I'm out of time. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kristen. Colin Fitzpatrick? Colin Fitzpatrick, please come on up.
So my name is Colin Fitzmaurice. I'm an attorney with Disability Rights Montana. Disability Rights Montana is the federally mandated agency for the protection and abuse, and we are responsible for going into state-run facilities and really any place that houses individuals with disabilities, and seeing if they're compliant with the government and ADA rules and 504 rules. Disability Rights Montana is aware that there's various issues that the city is facing in regards to their compliance with ADA in 504. There's various concerns that we're aware of, and I think this city would be wise to hire an individual to be their standalone ADA coordinator. This coordinator would be responsible for all things related to accommodations, to ADA, to accessibility, and would be the person you would go to ask questions. The current process is piecemeal, going from Eric, who then talks to various individuals in various departments and asking what they think it is. Instead, it should be a consistent framework where you get the same answer every time. And that individual also then carries with it the history of dealing with other issues. And so they can be consistent in what is being communicated to the public and to the individuals with disabilities. Missoula is an inclusive, progressive city. And I believe in a large ways, we lead Montana in that view and show it how it's done. I don't think that the city of Missoula should just rely on meeting the requirements of the ADA, of assigning a person to deal with the grievances. Let's be better than that. Let's have one consistent person that's trained to handle ADA complaints. The other issue that comes up is there's concerns about the cost of this. I think it was $84,000 and some odd. You got to ask yourself, how much are you going to pay for the next litigation involving these issues? My bet is it's going to be a lot more than $84,000. So I would recommend the city approve this budget amendment and hire a ADA coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Chris Kennedy, come on up.
Madam Mayor, esteemed members of the council, I stand before you today a little calmer than last time. I want to thank you for your patience in listening to me, and I'm so glad to see that what I thought the protocol would be, public comment first, is in fact being followed. And Bob, I believe I owe you thanks for supplying a word. I believe I spent 30 seconds finding or something. But I'm here today because I'd like to support the words and efforts of the people who came before, particularly Kristen Newman and my colleague. I'm also a social worker, and my work with the ADA is more tangential. But I have read her letter, and I strongly agree with her sentiments and what she's said. And I thought I would simply read a part I particularly agree with into the record. She mentions that, well, I will use my own words for this part. I am one of the approximately 7,350 residents of the city of Missoula under the age 65 with a disability. So this is quite, words so hard this late. Urgent, something like that to me. Present, pregnant. Anyway, so I'll simply read from her letter. Two key sections of our mayor's proclamation for the 36th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act stand out. Whereas despite this progress, people with disabilities continue to face persisting and emerging barriers, and the full promise of the ADA will only be realized through continued vigilance, accountability, and a shared commitment to accessibility, inclusion, and the leadership of people with disabilities themselves. And we affirm our shared responsibility to uphold civil rights, remove barriers in all forms, and ensure that Missoula is a community where all people of all abilities can live, work, learn, and participate fully. Too heavily does the City of Missoula leadership lean on free consultation from people with disabilities and expect outside nonprofit, grant-funded disability organizations to divert staff time and resources to guide the city's internal federal responsibilities of ADA compliance. Therein lies the biggest risk you have. Missoula County is vigilant. They have prioritized effective ADA coordination and continue ongoing renewal efforts consistently since the Department of Justice came to Missoula County as part of their Project Civic Access campaign and entered into a settlement agreement with them to ensure corrective action. Their ADA coordinator is available, responsive, and maintains a high level of professional understanding of person-centered approaches to ADA implementation, accommodations, and compliance. At the same time that Missoula County is actively updating their county-wide self-assessment and transition plan, the City of Missoula Council voted, finish the sentence, down a budget amendment for a staff position that would ensure accountability. This is a stark difference in governance.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
All right. Next up, Suzette Dussault. Suzette Dussault, come on up.
Good evening. I'm here to offer you an invitation to a celebration. This is a celebrating of who we are as Missoula. It begins with two amazing men who had a vision over 120 years ago for who we are as a community, who we are as a people called Missoulians. And that was Judge Knowles and A.J. Gibson. And together, Judge Knowles and A.J. Gibson created a beautiful spot in Missoula called the Hip Strip. It was their intention to create a place for working families to live and working families to have small owner businesses in which they would contribute to the culture and the community of Missoula. And so they have. For over 220 years, their vision of a neighborhood, of a community, has been realized and has become a beloved part of our community. And so I went into the depths of this story and will be presenting the history of this 120-year success story to the Bernice's Bakery, and we will have a First Friday opening at which some of that history will be discussed and explained, and I welcome you to come and participate in that joyful celebration. And so I have personal invitations for each and every one of you, and this involves the whole community, so everyone is welcome to celebrate this incredible of who we are as Missoulians. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, Ms. Dussault. Next up on the list is Levi Narum. Guy.
Hello, City Council members. I am Levi Narum. I am actually from Ravalli County in Missoula. So, I think I have some good insight into seeing how things are from the outside, not from the inside. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to start with something nice. You guys keep the city pretty clean, so good job for that. Second of all, I'm going to say this. What are you going to do about the flock cameras that are in Missoula? They say they're for crime. They say they're for protecting the people, but we all know that's bullshit. You know, you may think that's not, but those things are in violation of the Fourth Amendment. So I think you should wisely reconsider purchases of flock cameras and start tearing them down. Or else you're going to be in the next news story of the next 100 national stories of a flock camera being knocked down by the citizens because people don't want to get fired. Secondly, I'd like to see some more strengthening against AI data centers. 1 year moratorium is good, but I want to see more than that. I don't like data centers. I think they're destructive to the environment. They don't do anything except enrich the wealth. So I suggest going for a longer year, like maybe 20 years. If that was me, I'd say a permanent ban on data centers. There's one out in Broadview being proposed. That's going to be like 3,800 football fields. That's going to double Montana's energy. Do you want to have that in Missoula? No. Do you want to live by that? No. So I would rather than do that, spend something useful, build homes, and I don't mean ugly urban sprawl. I'm talking nice looking homes with mixed use development. Something like that. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Levi. Thanks for coming down, making comments. All right, and we still have a few minutes. Yes, Carrie Schreiber, come on up.
Hi, thank you for having me. Carrie Schreiber, Southgate Triangle Leadership Team. We were supposed to have an update today to be able to talk about our ice cream social, but I guess that didn't make the agenda. We had an ice cream social. It was cool, and some potential new board members, which is great. I listened to your all budget meeting, and a few of the things that I was interested in after getting a chance to learn about them during the budget meeting. I just wanted to make some comments, and I really appreciate Bob for bringing those amendments forward because they led to very interesting community discussions. When MEP talks about that their $100,000 donation for the CDPI from the city is then returned multifold with all the business they bring in, there's a few pieces we're missing in that conversation. One is the awareness that about $400,000 of their, roughly over $1 million budget is coming from the public, between the county and the city, between donations and between staff time. And also, of all that money that Grant Keir was talking about, he's bringing into Missoula. Of course, I would rather see local businesses promoted within Missoula rather than bringing these outside big companies in. There are tens of millions of public money with tax increment financing URD districts, and at the county level too, that are also going into these projects. And I want the public to be honored in how much we're contributing here. When I look at MEP's 990, which is their tax form, it shows anonymous donations of $50,000 or $25,000 or $20,000. Most of them are at $5,000, but that puts the people at Missoula at the absolute highest donor to MEP, and I think we deserve to have transparency with who those anonymous donors are. We know they're probably from the donor list, but we don't know who is who on there. And also to have full information when something like this is presented to City Council that includes acknowledging all the public funds that are going into these efforts. When we were talking about the Poverello and you all were asking for more coordination with the neighborhood councils, I thought that was awesome. I wonder if there are board members from the Poverello that could take that job rather than taking that away from staff time. And Mayor, when we're talking about your social media budget of $30,000 and needing to contract with people that do social media professionally, let's take that thinking forward to when I heard many times in the committee meeting for the ADA stuff, it was like, well, let's call Travis, let's ask Travis. We pay MEP contract money. We pay social media people contract money, but we're not paying the disability folks. I think we're missing some pieces in there.
Thank you, Ms. Schreiber. All right, folks, that does wrap up our public comment for items that are not on the agenda. We'll next move on to our public hearings. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor invite community comment. City council holds a public hearing on an item. A member of council makes a motion or several, and a vote is taken. The public hearing and vote take place on the same night unless there's a reason to hold over for a later meeting date. So item 6.1, we'll go ahead and start with budget 2027 annual appropriations and capital improvement program. I'll give just a quick rundown of how this will go, because this is a continuation of the public hearing that's already been opened. We opened the public hearing last Monday. There have been numerous presentations of the city council budget, both in Budget and Finance Committee as well as city council meetings here in this room. So this is a continuation of the public hearing, a final consideration, and proposed adoption of the FY27 budget. We will start off by hearing any minor updates from the staff. I mean, as many of you council members know, there's always a refinement of very small items that we make sure are fully transparent and part of the record. So staff have some of those brief updates before we get started. Counselor Savage will read all of the resolutions into the record, and noting, of course, that the Downtown Business Improvement District has been delayed to further date. We'll then hear the remaining amendment from Counselor Jordan, and we'll go through the normal process of council questions, public comment on that amendment, and then council deliberations. We'll take a vote on that amendment, and then we will proceed forward with the budget resolutions as outlined. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for any updates since the last presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Davis, members of council. For the record, my name is Eric Hallstrom. I'm the city's Chief Operations Officer, and I will just cover a few of the small changes that have occurred since the materials were published last week. So there haven't been material changes to the proposed budget since it was introduced. And then on Wednesday, given that all but one of the amendments that was proposed did not advance out of committee, there's no council-initiated changes for us to provide an update on beyond the single amendment that's under consideration tonight. A couple of the smaller changes we wanted to identify. First of all, the downtown SAM, or Safety, Access, and Mobility Capital Fund, was not showing up in our city all funds budget. The addition of this project has no impact on the bottom line because the revenues equal the expenditures, but it does reflect the fact that some of our staffing costs are covered by that grant, and we have included that now correctly in the all funds budget. We were also able, I think, as I mentioned in my presentation on fees, that were hoping to get the building fee proposals down somewhat. If you recall, there was an estimated 23% increase in building fees, and that was really built around maintaining the health of the building fund. We've been able to bring that down. I'm happy to report it's closer to 18%, just 18.1% is the updated change there. But the correct schedule of costs for the building fund is now connected to that resolution that has that lower number. We did a little cleanup on our general levy numbers to make sure that we are implementing the new tax laws that were passed by the legislature last legislative session consistently across all funds, and the impact of that is it brings our general fund revenues down $12,551. It's pretty small, but wanted to capture that change. And we removed a request from the water department for a valve maintenance trailer that was actually able to get purchased in fiscal year 2026, and so we don't need the authority to do that in fiscal year 27. So that concludes the smaller changes and updates since last Monday.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hallstrom. And before I ask council for any questions, we'll get the motions on the floor, and then we'll go ahead and start the process. Actually, it's a really long list. Does any council member have a question for Mr. Hallstrom with any of those minor updates? All right. Councilor Savage, take it away, please. Thank you.
All right, so item 6.1, budget FY27 annual appropriations and capital improvement program. I move that we adopt a resolution fixing the annual appropriations and the capital improvement program for the city of Missoula as set forth in the fiscal year 2027 budget and capital improvement program, including the Park District 1 work plan and budget for FY27, the Road District work plan and budget for FY27, the Tourism Improvement District work plan and budget for FY27, the Business Improvement District work plan and budget for FY27, the Permissive Medical Levy, Employee Health Insurance for FY27, the Missoula Local Government Building Special District work plan and budget for FY27. 6.2, remember we are only going to do the first three here. We will wait on the Downtown Business Improvement District numbers. I move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula, Montana, levying and assessing the lots and parcels within the City of Missoula Park District 1 in the amount of $12,137,137 for the costs associated with providing certain maintenance, purchasing, and improvement services in FY27 for city-owned facilities, land, and equipment under the responsibility and care of the City of Missoula Parks and Recreation Department, providing for a method of assessments and providing for other matters openly relating thereto. I move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council and the City of Missoula, Montana, levying and assessing the lots and parcels within the City of Missoula Road District Number 1 in the amount of $11,478,322 for the costs associated with and providing certain maintenance, purchasing, and improvement services in FY27 for city-owned facilities, land, and equipment under the responsibility and care of the City of Missoula Public Works and Mobility Department, Street Division, Cemetery, Engineering Division, Central Services Fleet, Maintenance Division, providing for a method of assessments and providing for the matters properly relating thereto. I move that we adopt a resolution levying annual assessments on the hotels located in the Tourism Business Improvement District of the City of Missoula for FY27 in the amount of $4 per occupied room night in accordance with 7-12-1132 MCA. Item 6.3, move that we adopt a resolution for the City of Missoula adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Fee Schedule effective January 1, 2027. I move that we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council adopting the Public Works Fee Schedule effective October 1st, 2026. I move that we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council adopting the business licensing and land use planning fees effective October 1, 2026. I move that we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing the fire fee schedule effective October 1, 2026. I move that we adopt a resolution approving the 2026 Service Area Report and Impact Fee Study and increasing certain impact fees to partially fund public facility construction, acquisition, or expansion required as a result of new development. 6.4, I move that we approve a resolution levying a special assessment and tax on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land situated within the Street Maintenance District Number 1 of the City of Missoula, Montana, in the amount of $154,075.43 for the purpose of defraying the cost of street sweeping and removing garbage and recycling from streets and avenues in the district during FY27. 6.5, I move that we approve a resolution of the Missoula City Council levying and assessing a special assessment and tax on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land situated within all special lighting districts of the City of Missoula, Montana, in the amount of $348,412.19 to defray the costs of street lighting in special lighting districts during FY27. 6.6, I move that we adopt a resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes for FY27.
Thank you very much. All right, so motions are on the floor, and we do have a remaining amendment for consideration. So we'll move to that amendment now. Councillor Jordan, you have your amendment for the organic parks feasibility study. And so we'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to you and your council questions after.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just as a quick refresher, and stop me if I'm not following the procedure because it's a new process for me, but just as a quick refresher, Missoula does sit on an EPA-designated sole source aquifer, which means it's our only water supply with no backup if it's ever contaminated. It's shallow and sits under porous sand, gravel, and cobbles, so there's very little natural filtering between the surface and our drinking water. Chemicals applied to the ground don't have much of a chance to break down before they reach it. And this isn't just an agricultural issue. The USGS is clear that non-point sources, which is runoff and seepage from land where pesticides are applied, are the dominant source of pesticide contamination in groundwater nationally. That includes turf care, lawns, parks, and grounds. And we're here in Missoula are still building our stormwater infrastructure meant to catch runoff before it reaches our water, so we can't lean on that system yet. This also isn't symbolic. It's progress toward climate commitments the city's already made, and it's what I consistently hear from residents, that they want to see less chemical use on our shared land. Progress has been slow. One park has lasting organic status 5 years after our first pilot grant. Our herbicide-free list resets every year to, 12 of 72 parks in 2026 because it's a snapshot, not a plan. Pesticide spending in our parks rose 38% from FY24 to FY25, and we don't track application quantities close enough to know why. And this study doesn't commit the city to a costly transition. It gets us to actual numbers so a future council can decide with facts instead of guesses. And I did a deep dive into our city budgets from 2021 through 2027. The first 4 years, I guess I'm just going to go into how I propose to finance this at this point. So yeah, I did a deep dive into our budgets from 21 to 27. The first 4 years, Missoula's budget contained no dedicated line, fund, or activity code for urban camping or encampment response. That changed in FY 2025 when the city created the Encampment Response Fund with $361,759 after council adopted an ordinance banning camping on most city property and elevating violations to misdemeanors, taking them from a civil to a criminal infraction, which creates criminal records, which is a choice not required by law or statute. In FY 2026 is where it gets creative. In one budget cycle, the city grew the encampment response to $1,089,482 by pulling from 3 other funds. Road District Number 1 contributed $570,373. The stormwater utility, funded by ratepayers, contributed $49,575, arguably taking away an ability to clean water before it gets to our aquifer. And Park District Number 1 contributed $618,281, split between a $382,213 transfer into the encampment fund and $236,068 in direct park spending. And finally, the citywide health insurance levy added another $81,405. Even our employee health insurance levy is getting pulled into paying for encampment funds. In FY 2027, the proposed FY 2027 budget adds a new unfunded $19,400 police overtime line, and critically, the mayor's proposed budget includes an additional $48,134 request for encampment response in Park District Number 1, unfunded, sitting available right now. So here's my ask. I'm not touching a dollar of what's already operating. This mechanism won't drop any programs below the FY 2026 funding level. I'm asking council to decline that new $48,135 proposal and decline the new $19,400 police overtime line and cover the remaining $82,465 with proportional share from activity 460-433 and the Encampment Response Fund, just 4.3% and 4.1% of their FY27 baselines toward a one-time $150,000 feasibility study. The cost and feasibility of an organic natural maintenance program for our parks, including a baseline assessment, cost modeling, best management practices, and a park-by-park roadmap. The city's proven it can move nearly $1.3 million a year across 4 funds to respond to the symptoms of a housing shortage. We can certainly find $150,000 once to find out what it would cost to maintain our parks differently. It's not a new direction, it's already city policy. We've got the PROS 2040 master plan adopted last year, commits us to climate sustainability and protection of natural environment. Our zero waste plan sets diversion targets by 2040. Our 2022 climate lens resolution directs staff to apply exactly this kind of process tool before committing. And our 2012 Conservation and Climate Action Plan already names compost as parks strategy to cut costs and emissions. And finally, I just want to end with, there was a Clark Fork celebration last Friday where we celebrated the updates to accessing the Clark Fork River. One of our main park staff, Mr. Morgan Valiant, described decades undoing industrial waste in that river, restoring bank and fencing habitat. Linda McCarthy from the Missoula Downtown Association said it simply: water is life-giving. An organic study is the same value practiced upstream. If we'll spend $2.5 million restoring a riverbank after the fact, we can spend $150,000 once to keep the waste out of the system in the first place. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Jordan. The amendment is on the floor and the funding mechanism has been outlined and emailed to all council. So I'll start with council questions, starting with Councilor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilor Jordan, for your thoroughness on this and trying to find different funding options. the funding option you've settled on that you kind of just outlined around some of the houselessness cleanup programs and things like that, does the account you want to bring this over from that references the park district, is that free and clear money that's being spent on something other than the staff time from the Parks Department it takes to kind of do some of the cleanup? Because you mentioned the road district and the Parks District in your kind of intro, and one thing we've talked about a lot on the floor is that not every dollar of the money that's kind of denoted to be spent on cleanup, for lack of a better word, is new money. A lot of it was, some of it to Mr. Campbell's actual request, trying to quantify the staff time we're taking from the other departments. And so my understanding is from Stormwater and from Public Works and from Parks and actually from MPD, the cleanup takes staff time. So I guess what I'm asking is, from those funds, is it money that's not just going towards paying the staff from those departments to do the work? Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand, because the funding that I'm drawing from is all directly related to encampment cleanup. It's the encampment cleanup fund, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess I'll ask it a little different way. So the encampment cleanup is done by staff members in various departments, with a couple exceptions. The FTE that goes into that are people that are on payroll either way. So from Public Works, for instance, if somebody isn't participating in the cleanup, they are still employed and still have to be paid by Public Works to do things like run the street sweepers or, the various departments and what they may be. So I guess what I'm asking is the money that you're looking to pull from the encampment cleanup costs associated with payroll for people who we still need to pay, whether they're doing that job or another job?
To be honest, I'm not actually sure. These are new funds since 2025, so I'm assuming they are directly related to cleanup. And I'm not sure if anybody from Parks is here to answer that, or maybe.
I was going to say, maybe we could redirect
finance
Dale and
folks.
put him on the spot a little bit. I don't know.
But yeah, my understanding is that this is just directly related to camp cleanup, just based on looking at the budget. And that when we hire people for Parks, encampment cleanup is part of what they do. It's not you get hired to do encampment cleanup or you get hired to be a park staff person. So looks like Erin's got the answers.
Yeah, Erin Pehan is here. Thank you so much. And I just want to remind folks that Ordinance 1260 is the city's, it's our urban camping response. So it includes cleanup, but it also has some programmatic elements, and that'll be part of the conversation, I'm sure, tonight. But I think it's just a very good reminder. All right, Erin, please.
Erin Pehan with CPDI. So the urban camping budget that council approves every year are expenses that are specific to our enforcement and our programmatic activities tied to that. And so that is just looking at those specific staff within our code compliance division, as well as the vehicle parking permit program. There are some costs like overtime for police and others, but other staff wages for stormwater, those types of wages tend to live within those departments, some of which are provided as kind of like an in-kind to the work that we're doing. That being said, the revenue sources for the urban camping budget are the street district, roads district, and park district. And so it's not like general fund dollars that can be moved out of that and spent on anything. They would, whatever they were moved to, would still have to be an eligible expenditure under either the road district or the parks district, where those monies would be reallocated to.
Quick follow-up on that, and then I'll be done. And I know you're not the expert on the Parks District question I'm about to ask, but in Ms. Jordan's email, the largest chunk is item 3, which is $82,465, and of that, $32,077 would come from Parks District 1 urban camping. So presumably, the Parks District, setting aside whether it's paying employees in the Parks Department for their role in the encampment cleanup, the Parks Department, the Parks District money could be shifted over to this cost because it would be parks and parks, right?
Potentially, and I'm not sure if that is referring to $30,000 of the urban camping, or however much that was of the urban camping budget that is paid with revenues from the park district. Okay, yeah, so those do go to salaries and wages for our enforcement and our VPP staff, and so without those funds, we would have to reduce that particular budget accordingly, not the parks budget for the work that they're doing in parks.
Would you expand VPP just so folks know
Yeah.
what you're talking about?
Yes, our vehicle permit program is an important part of our overall approach to ensuring that there are safe legal places for folks who have to live outdoors, currently have to be. And so that provides that lawful alternative. And folks can apply for and receive a permit to stay in their vehicles for up to a 90-day period of time. We provide trash, regular visits with those folks to provide connection to resources across the community, and also to mitigate the impact of that on surrounding neighbors and businesses.
Thank you. And I'll just note that that permit is at no cost to the folks that are obtaining the permit.
Correct. And we have about 65 ongoing permits that are out there and issued at any point in time, serving over 200 Missoulians.
Councilor Nugent,
And
follow
then
up?
just the other part of that, item 3, the 50,388 comes from Fund 1400.250. And I'm just wondering if anybody here can tell me where the funds that go into 1400.250 come from. Is that road district, or are those?
Yeah, so that the 140, the 250, that is the urban camping enforcement budget. And so that is what authorizes our expenditures in that area. The revenues associated with those expenditures come from the parks and the roads districts. So the referral's talking about a little bit of the same things, but it's one view of the expenses and another view of the revenues.
So maybe the Parks District's funds could be spent this way, assuming we made the other budget changes, but the road district funds could not be spent on a study for the parks.
I would defer to Dale on eligibility of that. I think the important piece, though, that is a little bit confusing to me still, that I want to make sure and emphasize, is that these are all funds that, no matter where the revenue sources, are being spent on our enforcement and our support activities today. So if they're moved, those services will be decreased as a result of that.
Thank you all for trying to work together to answer that. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councilor Cheryl.
Aaron, don't sit down. Thank you. First of all, I appreciate you bringing this, Kristen, and I also appreciate from Wednesday you outlining where you're bringing the money from, although you alluded to that on Wednesday. So I have a couple questions. Is that okay? I have a couple different directions I'm thinking about, but so the road, I appreciate Mr. Nugent's line of questioning, because my guess is that the road district piece couldn't be used for this anyway, just knowing what that is. So if we were going to decrease the level of cleanup, then one thing I guess I would like to know is, and you may or may not know this, off the top of your head, but what I experienced being on council when we went from having 1260 to, from not having 1260 to having 1260, and what kind of the impetus for actually doing that ordinance was that we were absolutely overwhelmed at the city and the mayor's office and in my own, email inbox as well as voicemail with complaints. So I guess, my question is around what before and after we actually started putting money into and did this ordinance. What was the difference between the complaints on those, and also maybe talking about not just the complaints that were coming in for all of us, but the vehicle parking program and how that's served people, because I think that's been a really, really big success from my understanding of it. And obviously all of this type of work comes with its challenges. And anyway, So that's a very long first question. I do have another one.
Okay, thank you.
I think the budget that was approved really covers this kind of three-part approach that we take. One part of that is enforcement on 1260, and so making sure that people who are camping in areas that they're not allowed to camp in, whether that is adjacent to a buffer like a school or a homeless shelter in a residential neighborhood, that we're proactively going out, meeting with those folks, educating people on the ordinance, providing notifications, providing support and clear communication about when cleanups are going to happen, and then engaging in those cleanups. That's that real enforcement-based activity. And then we have really providing people legal spaces to be in, and that connect to support and hopefully to what's next for these folks. And that largely comes in the form of our proactive presence, again, providing education way earlier than we get to the compliance or the enforcement element, and then also working with people to get them enrolled in that free vehicle permit program while we provide those really logistical supports like trash assistance with emptying their sewer containment units or sewage containment units, as well as connection to the coordinated entry system and services throughout the Missoula community as well. And so it really is a comprehensive approach. We have seen complaints decrease by about 2/3 since before the ordinance was put into place. We were managing about 1,200 to 1,300 citizen resident complaints per year prior to that. The year after it was implemented, I think we received about 300. So we're able to get to them, resolve them in a much better way, both for residents of Missoula and for those folks who find themselves living outdoors.
Thanks. And we're actually, my understanding is we're helping, if people need to move their vehicle, we're sometimes assisting in that as well. Is that true? So, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of the professional services component of the budget is trash. Some of those more logistical services, like helping people empty their sewage containment units, and also towing vehicles. So sometimes these vehicles aren't operable, or they're operable when they first get permitted and then they break down. And so we do help to tow vehicles to appropriate locations. We help to tow them to get serviced. Sometimes we help to tow them to a family member's in town when they're able to secure a place to stay in them. And so that is a big part of the budget. That is something we did ask for an enhancement for this year, because we found that was one area where we were seeing a lot of increases in what that was costing us in the private sector, and then also using it much more frequently than we originally thought to keep people successfully in those permits for that 90-day period, and again, reduce the impact on surrounding businesses.
Thanks. And I have one more question, not for you though, Erin. You could sit down. Well, maybe until the next person. So, we have been looking into how to go more organic in our system and looking into what we're doing. We've had pilot programs. So reached out to other communities. We had a big update on those efforts and things with council. So I guess my question here, and I don't know if this is for parks, I don't know if this is for you, Mayor, but is, can you speak to what we are doing? I mean, I think that we're not talking about what we're doing and where we are with things, and I just want to hear more about an update for the community and for us as to kind of where we are with the use of these in our parks.
Thank you for your question, Councilor Cheryl. And I am joined by Morgan Valiant from Missoula Parks and Recreation. He is online, but I'll take a stab at answering that question first. As the Missoula Parks and Recs Director, Marina Yoshioka is not able to join us this evening. So I very much appreciate you giving that synopsis. The conversation that we had here in council chambers, where our Parks and Rec team were able to articulate our current practices, I think was really helpful. And I think what was also really helpful about the community conversation is those existing practices weren't readily available on our website. So the city Parks and Rec department spent a bit of time and energy putting together our current practices, which I think are really helpful. And I'll mention to folks where that is. It's on the City of Missoula's website. Just get into it real quick. Under Parks and Rec, Caring for Parks, and then Park Maintenance. And you can find all of that information there. I think what is really helpful, and was really helpful for me to hear that presentation a number of different times and in conversations, is that the city does have thoughtful, timely, and selective use of herbicides. And it's just one tool of many used to maintain our parklands. We have a policy that in all city parks, herbicides are not used in or on picnic shelters, playgrounds, volleyball courts, splash decks, or other water sources. And then Missoula Parks and Rec exceeds our legal requirements by posting areas to be treated 24 hours before the application and 24 hours after the application. Many signs are posted throughout. I know we heard constituents here in the past say they didn't see the sign, and I'm sure that's the case. I think Greeno Park was the example, and there's a lot of linear parkland there. We certainly do our best to sign throughout. This information on the city website, I think, is really helpful because we have a rotating list of herbicide-free parks in our effort to make sure that we are limiting the amount of herbicide and the judicial practice. We maintain a list of parks that we are rotating application of herbicides on, and that is all publicly disclosed, and that information is available on our website. One of the things that I think, just to remind us all of, the city of Missoula is not out there chem lawning so we can have bright green turf. We do maintain turf for sports equipments for sporting events, because when you have certain kinds of weeds, especially broadleaf, you have really significant injury rates when it comes to playing sports like soccer, for example. But at the end of the day, weeds steal nutrients, they steal water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide from desirable plants and from desirable plants and grasses. The city of Missoula, and this is written in and documented in our Prost plan, has been moving to hybrid parks for a number of years, and that is currently on our current plans for, like, the Northside Park, for example, where we are bringing in more native plants, flowers, trees, and grasses. The weed types that we see in and around Missoula are aggressive in nature. They make it difficult for turf, but for ground cover and native plants to compete once those weeds are established. I will remind folks that state law does require landowners, and that includes the city of Missoula, to manage noxious weeds to prevent them from negatively impacting land that's used for forestry, agriculture, livestock, wildlife, native plants, or other beneficial uses. So if leafy spurge, which you see driving up and down Catlin, for example, after fill comes in, after a construction project, often we will see noxious weeds take root, and it's the responsibility of the adjacent landowner. In this case, if these noxious weeds take root, it would be the responsibility of the city of Missoula to remove those. So that is why we have this judicious and integrated approach to vegetation management. And again, I will say that the vegetation management toolbox that we have, weed prevention is the key, because once these invasive species lock in, it is very difficult to remove them. And I will just say that, part of the conversation and comments that I've seen from the public have indicated that this is a no-cost decision, and that is just simply not true. Everything comes with the cost. This study of $150,000, relative to what we're talking about with the city budget, I recognize that it seems like it should be a manageable expense. I will say that the integration of a program and the implementation of that is not cost-free. We have done research to date. It is something that we are extraordinarily mindful of. I'm extraordinarily mindful of any tax increase, and that's something we have talked about throughout this whole budget process. It is something that this is a priority. Everything that I just explained, I think, demonstrates that the city's approach to organic parks, reducing our dependence on chemicals and herbicides, absolutely shows that this is a priority. It's a priority that we are balancing with all of the other priorities that we're having in conversation here around this dais. And the fact of the matter is that we have decisions to make when it comes to trade-offs in order to make sure that our impact to property taxes is as limited as possible. And that's why it didn't show up in the budget, but it absolutely is a priority. And depending on what happens tonight, I am committed to continuing to work with our Parks and Rec Department and the community if there's a way in which we can find resources, depending on, again, how this amendment goes. Maybe we're able to find resources through different kinds of funding sources. Maybe there's private sector funds. As you know, and as we had a discussion last Wednesday, the Parks Department has a fund that private sector dollars come into. Those are what help fund our scholarship programs for all of our park and rec camps, especially for folks that are low income families. They access those scholarship programs. There's no reason that private philanthropic dollars can't come into that fund, where we could also help fund a feasibility study and continuing to do this work. If that was the case, we would come forward with a budget amendment to ensure that we actually have the budget authorization to do that work. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I just wanted to make sure that you know where I'm coming from in this case. And, you know, personally, I've removed all of my lawn. I use absolutely zero chemicals, and I have a extraordinarily pollen-friendly yard. I would encourage Missoulians to do that. It makes me cringe when I see folks applying chemicals at random. I think dandelions are beautiful. My dog eats them. And it is something that at the city we are constantly diligently balancing all of the various aspects that we have to at the city.
Thanks. I might have another question in a little bit, but I'll stop for now.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Councilor Sherrill. I appreciate it. Councilor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just start off with an easy one first. I'm just curious where the 19.4 time came from. I looked at the line item budgets and new item. Bring up a graph on that.
Yeah, it's just doing a deep dive into the big, long budget list, and there is a proposal for $19,400 to be added to the encampment fund for police overtime.
That's off.
Please.
That's off the FY27 line item or new budget request.
It's a new funding request, yes, for FY27.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at that. I might have further at some point. I did have another question for.
Absolutely, and if it's appropriate, Councilor Campbell, Lee Griffin, Finance Director, raised her hand, which may also help inform that first question. Then we'll come back to your next question. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide some clarity and history on that overtime line item. That line item wasn't shown in the FY26 line item, which may be why it's coming across as a new request, but in fact, it was approved in the FY25 budget. We saw that it wasn't in the FY26 budget. It was added during the Q2 FY26 budget amendments, and it currently sits in the baseline budget for police in FY27.
Thank you, Lee.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Councilor.
Just other one other. Curious if these funds get redistributed as proposed come FY28, is this a case where the money that we're taking out gets sent back into the original locations, or is that going to be like $150,000 just out there somewhere that has to be reallocated to the line items they came from, or how would that work for?
Dale?
Dale Bickle, Chief Administrative Officer. I think it depends on how council approves a motion. It could be treated as a one-time reduction in the line items that are suggested. And if it's designated as one time, what that would mean to us is that it's automatically in the next year's budget back into the previous funding level.
Thank you.
All right, Counselor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clarify, I think what Mr. Nugent was getting at and how Ms. Pehan answered. It sounds like we can all agree that road district and park district funding is being put into the the encampment response fund. But what I'm hearing is that it still has to stay delineated once it's in that fund, or once it goes into a fund, can't those funds just all then be used for whatever purpose the fund they've been moved into says they can be used for? Because my research did find that Park District and Road District contributed to the Urban Encampment Fund. But what I feel like I'm hearing is that they still have to stay separate, and that Road District funds cannot be used for Park District. That is crazy.
Well, I'm not the expert. My question was clarifying whether the money coming from the road district was basically covering the employee time for employees that are paid by the road district. So when the cleanup uses public works employees was the road district
Fair.
money.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And then Ms. Pehan, yeah. So you're saying that we can take road and park district funds, put it into another fund that is meant for an entirely new process, but we have to keep those two funds separate within that new fund.
Correct. Mr. Bickle?
Dale Bickle. So when this was a new program, yes, and when it was created, we did an initial estimate of the amount of work done in this program that is in public right of way, which is road district eligible versus parks district eligible. We refined that a little bit in FY26, and it is about half and half. So the funds that are generated in the road and park district have to be consistent with the terms spelled out in the council resolution that it created those things. And that's what we're following. So I don't think we can redirect urban camping funds for that specific purpose. What we could do, though, is reduce the park district allocation to the urban camping program and free that up for the purposes of this amendment.
Thank you. All right, you bet. I'll move on to some other questions. I do see Lee Griffin has her hand up. We're all covered? Okay, great, thank you. Move on to other council questions. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think this is primarily for staff. And I apologize. This is probably maybe a question that should have been asked last Wednesday, but it's just occurred to me now. And it's pretty clear that really sorry about that. That hurts my ears. It seems pretty clear that funding is one of our biggest hurdles here. And being really new to council, it is very difficult for me to go into the budgets and tease out the funding for that. And I applaud my colleague and fellow ward member for her efforts in doing that. And my question just really comes down to, does it seem reasonable for staff that, with the mayor's point earlier, that given the amount of this money, that we could find this $150,000 within our budget to finance this study? Does that seem like a reasonable ask to make of you guys with the knowledge that you have of our budget? Or is it just so tight that that's not even possible?
Dale Bickle. It is a little bit that tight because what we are doing is following all of our budget policies as well. So in this example, we did prepare a staff fiscal note on how we would recommend funding this. If it was, though that fiscal note didn't look at actual other deprioritizing certain functions, and the normal place that this would, what we would normally fund a one-time item such as this study would be from Park District fund balance. However, the Park District fund balance is just the budget that's before you adopts that fund balance is just slightly below our reserves, and we don't think we should. We're not recommending that you go below that established reserve policy related to this. So the fiscal note says is that you have the ability to raise the Park District assessments by that much, but by that amount, it's it's compared to the entire city taxing authority, it's not very big, but it is a portion of tax increase. But that is the most straightforward way to fund this.
Please.
Thought that was you, not me. The fund that you were saying was the appropriate place to.
Councilor McCoy, do you have your speaker on?
I don't think so. Okay, we'll try again. I'm just curious what that reserve balance is. Like your recommendation is that we don't go underneath that. What is that fund balance?
The policy recommendation is 7% of ongoing revenues, and that's the same level we have for all of our tax-supported funds. I don't have the dollar amount off the top of my head. You might be able to grab that really quick.
The projected fund balance for ending FY27 would be $1,128,578, which is about $68,500 less than the target for reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Councilor Savage.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. McCoy's perspective because that's exactly what I was sitting over here thinking. And I also do appreciate that Ms. Jordan has tried, and I think tried very hard to find this money. I am not against this study at all. I'm actually super supportive of it. I'm just trying to figure out how to pay for it. And so one question I did have for you, Ms. Jordan, is I just wondered how you got to the $150,000 and wonder if there's any consideration for being able to do this work for less, or just curious if that's a number, where it came from is all.
Yeah, thank you for the question. When I originally started thinking about this budget amendment, I reached out to Director Yoshioka and asked her a few questions. First was, if we did the study, how much would you need? And she said 75 to 150,000. So I did go to the high end just because things often cost more than you think they're going to. And then I also asked her, if we were to find this funding, would the Parks Department have the capacity to do this work? And she said yes. So it was a direct conversation.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This perhaps for finance. Just spitballing here, but every quarter we have these budget adjustments, reconciliations, whatever we call them, where we found maybe there's more money coming in than we thought, or report here, and we do transfers in and outs. Is there a path in that process that, should it happen to be that there's an overage in a particular fund that's conducive to a project like this, that correct any overages in that process too?
Dale Bickle. Yes, actually, that is possible. So, as the budget comes together, and I'll use, the Park Districts as a continued example. The Parks District had a fund balance in excess of the reserves in this budget that is being allocated. The largest piece of that is to be able to continue the scholarship program for access to camps and after-school programs. And then it also has a couple of smaller infrastructure style maintenance projects. That's where those are the types of things. And so, but constantly through the year, we are revisiting our budget to understand where we're at, and to the extent that our projections are showing there is capacity, or there is a grant that seems eligible that we apply for, and suddenly we can just use a match. Or there is, I know Director Yoshioka's estimates of 150,000 are just that, right? If we are able to work through this, understand a scope of work that's actually less than that, all those are the types of things that we can do. Because it isn't required to necessarily fix an assessment, we could always, these one-time activities are the types of things that could come through in a budget amendment, yes.
Well,
Please.
being that's the case, I mean, from year to year and quarter to quarter, I mean, we really don't know until it comes about where we are with the numbers. But I'm just wondering if sponsors benefit, if there's a way of contemplate codifying such an allocation if an overage of that sort does come about.
So I think that's a request for a friendly amendment, but before Councillor Jordan has the opportunity to respond, I just want to clarify your question, Councillor Campbell. So by codifying it, that would basically be in the motion, in the motion for the amendment as the potential funding source, assuming that throughout the year, if there were to be fewer expenses than projected, and there was an overage of revenue for that reason, that instead of that going to the fund balance, it would be used for this purpose. Is that right?
Correct. Something along those lines is what I'm thinking of. And I'm just offering that as an idea. I don't know how you feel. I mean, it's based on, what if scenario. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not, but it might be something worth considering to you as and I don't know how I would construct an amendment, but it'd be some sort of fallback clause to say that, if funding isn't available for my initial amendment, that then we authorize or we direct staff to in reviewing any quarterly updates with budget transfers, that first priority be given to directing funding towards initiative, something along those lines.
Thank you. Mr. Bickle, do you have a response to that prior to maybe hearing from Councillor Jordan? Response on her amendment?
Yeah, as I understand it, I think that is a workable motion to direct the administration and staff to, to the extent budget savings are realized in the Parks District, that the priority for those funds are to go to this project. Yes, I think that is would be a motion that we could follow. Yes.
And then Councillor Campbell, is that just open for discussion, or are you proposing a friendly amendment?
I would propose that as a friendly amendment to the sponsor, that and as fiscal year 27 progresses, that we look at the quarterly reports and any revenue sources that present themselves that are eligible for use within the scope of this project be allocated as a first priority to this project. Boy, that was awfully long-winded, but
I think we understand where you're getting to. Thank you very much. We'll figure out an actual amendment if that should be accepted. How about that? Councillor Jordan?
No, I really appreciate everybody's creative thinking on this. I guess my one clarifying question would be, are we going for 150,000 or what specific amount are we aiming for?
well, I guess I have to ask a question before I answer the question. That is, the 150,000, that's something that Parks and Rec is needing like upfront right now. Like they need 150,000, or can it be broken out over the course of the year?
The idea is to get a consultant to do a deep dive, and I'm not sure if we could scope the work out in chunks like that, but it seems like it would make more sense to ask a consultant, we need this, this, and this, and have them give them a fee for that entire scope of work, rather than we just want you to do work on this, and then we'll wait for more money, and then we want you to do work on this. So it'd be cutting the project up. So yes, long story short, 150 upfront would be the best use of consultant time.
Okay. I guess my response to that is, we look to see what majority of council, because that's going to come down to what we're agreeable to allocating. If it's those 4 funds in total to get the $150,000, great. If not, then whatever that difference is going to have to go to this alternate route to fund. And, hopefully, after a quarter or two, we could find that to fund in the cost of the, we're presuming a lot, but one of the presumptions would be the cost of the study doesn't that time. So,
President Nugent, do you have something to mention prior to decision here?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, you could probably say up to 150,000 and achieve what you're both doing. But I would just suggest, Councilor Jordan, that you take a few minutes to think about this and we keep going through the questions, because there might be an idea from someone who hasn't even raised their hand yet. So I know, Councilor Campbell likes to jump in there and get his friendly amendment, but let's maybe just think about it. Is that okay?
Fair. Okay, looks like we have agreement. Good idea. Thank you. We'll circle back on that. Next up then for council questions, Councilor Nugent.
I just wanted to talk more. No, I appreciate Mr. Campbell's questioning. I was going to ask about vacancy savings. So I actually think that there's some validity to this idea. And also if there's a mix of maybe a grant and some, I think this could be a direction, because my question was going to be to park staff. We heard the presentations that Councilwoman Cheryl referenced, and we've definitely heard from the committee or from the community, and I want to acknowledge the folks in the audience. We have heard and read your emails, and I appreciate the community engagement. I'm curious if it's $150,000 and Parks says they can do it, why they didn't put it in the budget to begin with. But if we were to say you need to come up with $150,000, I'm curious where Parks would come up with it right now.
I can speak to conversations that I've had with the director and certainly with Chief Administrative Officer, and there's a host of other priorities. One of the things that we don't stay out in front of is funding our existing needs for dealing with our existing assets and capital, right? So we hear that a lot, that, we're going to build more things. People asked about that same thing when we're building new trails, the new park at Midtown Commons, those kinds of things, is do you have the budget to take care of the current things that you have now? One of the things that was funded using basically excess fund balance was items that have been put off for existing asset management. This is like fixing and capital needs, fixing playgrounds, fixing things like that exist in our current parks. So those are the priorities that Parks felt like were urgent and necessary. Not to say that this is important. I'll remind everybody that people value an integrated management practice at the City of Missoula. But that's why it wasn't in the original budget to begin with. And again, balancing the amount of increase in Parks District and overall tax increase.
I appreciate that. I think that it's just, as we hear from people, I think it's important for people to understand kind of how you come up with the budget recommendations and kind of that give and take. I won't put the Parks Department on the spot, only because the director is not with us tonight.
I did see Mr. Valiant raise his hand, and not to put him on the spot, but Morgan, if there's something that you have to add that I didn't cover, please do.
No, I thank you very much. Morgan Valiant, Associate Director of the Ecosystem Services Division here at Missoula Parks. I don't have too much to add. This is a great discussion. As you all know, our department is very nimble and we are very good at chasing money. I do think that grants are something that we would look in for this. As far as priorities go, this does kind of fall in with our update of our turf management plan. Both the turf management plan, the conservation lands management plan, and our urban forest management plan are 3 plans that were all identified within PROS that need to be updated. And so it's not that developing an organic turf management plan isn't a priority, but it was not one of the 3 updated plans that we identified within PROS. And this year, I do know that our budget request, knowing that we had a small amount of money, we really did focus on those Prost recommendations and goals from that master plan.
Thanks, Morgan. Appreciate that additional context. Counselor Campbell, your questions are all answered? Okay, thank you. And Counselor Becerra?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Kristen for working on this. I think I have always been very supportive of studies that help us get well positioned to receive implementation funding, at least in transportation. And I see that same route as being a very valid one to make things happen in our community. But I did have the same question as Ms. Savage as to the $150,000 for study. And I do think that we are really resourceful in this city in terms of trying to partner with different agencies and the university or different similar interests in the community that can perhaps be another mechanism for funding. And so I was just curious if the conversation with Parks already took place where, you know, they would start looking into a grant path or a path towards some sort of grant funding for the study that can help reduce the cost. So we're not looking at 150,000, but some sort of match for a study. So wondering if that conversation already took place or if that is something that is on the table for the Parks Department. That was a question for the sponsor and Parks.
We did not talk about grant funding. We just talked about if I found the money in the existing budget somewhere, would it be something that Parks could facilitate? And oh gosh, another point and I just lost it. But yep, that's all I have to say right now, sorry.
And then I have another question, or perhaps it's more like a clarification, maybe from Dale, or if there's anyone from Public Works. My understanding is that the allocation from Road District to the encampment fund for cleanups is a function of right-of-way maintenance that we have in the city. We maintain our right-of-way, and that is why Road District money comes into the encampment fund. Is that not right?
Yes, that's correct. The aspect of the encampment response program that's in the right of way is that road district eligibility piece. It is pooled together, but there's a staff works together, the compliance staff, and do work. But but the allocation of road district and park districts is best our estimate of the level of effort in either our public streets and right-of-ways and versus parklands.
So a quick follow-up. So if we were to reduce the allocation or the contribution, if you will, of road district money into the encampment fund, could we potentially not be meeting our right-of-way maintenance goals for the city?
Well, I actually think it would be the opposite. I think you'd have to reduce, in order to fund this, you'd have to reduce the park district side. And so I think we would need to, I don't know how we would exactly do it. You'd have to think about it, but I would presume we would have to reduce services on the park services side more than the right-of-way side.
Okay. And then lastly, I guess this for Kristen, if we were to, I think we learned from Dale now that in order to use some of these funds, we would have to reduce the contribution that these two districts put into that fund, the encampment fund, and use it towards something different, because we cannot be mixing apples and oranges here in terms of funding buckets. But that would result in less cleanups. And is that what you're suggesting, that we do less cleanups in order to fund a different activity of the city?
Yes, and this is where my disappointment with 1260 comes into play. I would argue that we have created more harm through our encampment cleanups. I would argue that the city has not fulfilled its promises in supplying services to the unhoused so that they can avoid encampment cleanup, such as providing a map of resources. I would argue that we have shifted the funding mechanism down the criminal justice system by easily $50,000 with increased court cases in a municipal court, largely with people who are receiving first-time criminal offenses based on the rule that we created. And so, yes, I am saying let's do less encampment cleanups because we're causing harm.
Okay, thanks. No more questions.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Anderson.
Sorry, hopefully the mic behaves a little bit better than it did in committee. I guess my question, similar in the lines to Ms. Becerra, my first question is, urban camping up line items is not new funding, it's just a different way to show when a park staff person or a road district person or a police officer is spending their time on urban camping and cleanup and enforcement. Basically, so when Tom, a person from Parks, is out doing urban cleanup, on his timesheet, he's putting urban cleanup on there. So it was a way for us to quantify how much we were actually spending. And it's not just money like staff time, which is also, is a valuable resource that costs money because we have to pay Tom to go out and do that. Is that correct?
No, I mean, this budget is that urban camping enforcement budget is direct costs really that are being paid. So as Director Pahan mentioned, a lot of the costs that are done by when a cleanup operation happens, there are staff costs that are still borne by the individual departments, but those aren't part of the urban camping budget. There are direct costs, so machine hour rentals, overtime. There's some contracts have a hazard pay negotiation. All of those are part of the urban camping budget, but the core base salary of a person doing the cleanup isn't there. It's largely the personnel. The biggest part of the personnel lines in that budget is the staffing up of the code enforcement to be able to run the vehicle parking program and those type of things. So it is largely the direct costs there.
But that is a cost from a staff perspective. The staff costs sunk
Yes.
into there, which is why you see the allocation from like health insurance. How much of that?
Yes, because that's directly related to the calculation we use to health insurance is an eligible levy in the permissive medical levy, and so that's that piece of it is that pro rata share of the staff time in that fund. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to clarify that. So it's like, it's not just free money sitting there that doesn't have something to do. Like actually it's allocated for something.
Yes.
And I just, I think the question that Ms. Becerra asked Ms. Jordan, I want to clarify is that in the initial conversation with the Parks Department, looking for grants was not a part of the initial conversation. It was like, hey, if this is something that you're really passionate about, this is what we estimate it would probably cost if you wanted to go out and find the money in the budget.
I would say that, first of all, this isn't a passion project. This is helping us get in line with our climate goals.
I'm not asking if it's a passion project. I'm asking how the
I'm trying to work
conversation
within
went.
the existing budget and bring forward budget amendments. I didn't talk to anybody about grants. I've already stated that I didn't. And I
was
am
just
trying to just make
clarifying
sure that we're aligned with our climate goals and responsible to the public who've been begging us for this project. And this is just a research project. This isn't committing us to a rollout program. It's just a one-time cost.
Yes, I understand that. And basically, in my just very quick Googling, have found multiple grants that are for municipalities to study this exact same thing. So I think that while I am supportive of this, I would be much more comfortable if the ask were to come to us in 3 months, 2 months, 6 weeks, I don't care, that says, hey, we've applied for this grant. We would like to have matching funds. Here's what this grant allocation amount is. This is how much the matching funds are, and would happily vote for that budget amendment, especially as we are seeing budget amendments come through in quarterly installments. and however we do the budget allocation. I think that to me, that gets at everything that everyone is trying to accomplish in a much more fiscally responsible way. And, you know, we have been incredibly successful in getting grants. Are always applauding the various departments, parks being one of them. And so I think, and we have a lot of really strong advocates who are here. And so I think that this would be a great public-private partnership to achieve that study.
Counselor Anderson,
To
conclude your question.
yes, I clarified the question from Ms. Jordan. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Counselor Ponton.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. One for Ms. Griffin. Sorry to put you on the spot, but one line that caught my eye from fiscal year 26 to 27 was the fixed charges, which is line 500. There's about a $426,000 increase year over year, which is about 38%. And I didn't see anything in the new budget doc that sort of supports that. Can you just shed any light on that?
That comes from a variety of sources, including the administrative fee that gets charged to provide centralized services, HR, payroll, and so forth. That does get trended with the overall trending of the budget. It also includes things like increases to bank fees and other sort of standard utility type of costs.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I just have some budgetary clarification questions. So when we talk about Fund 1400 2.50, which is our encampment response fund, it started in fiscal year 2026 from my research. So we invented that fund in response to criminalizing survival camping. And then in our proposed fiscal year 27, we have a baseline budget of 1.2 million and some change. I'm trying to figure out exactly how we're spending that money. And it's hard because we don't get this level of detail in the budget that's given to us. But from my research, it's looking like we're spending nearly $40,000 on dumping fees alone, garbage disposal costs. And that's under line 345. Line 350, which is professional services, kind of this nebulous of $546,000 and change. That includes cleanup, contractors, hauling, and possibly equipment, machinery rental. But like I said, I can't figure it out. I do see that we have $433,000 in wages. We have $21,000 and change in supplies, which is gas and vehicle repair. And then we have $633,000, almost $634,000 that is this purchase services category, under which professional services is $548,000. And so what I'm trying to get at is that we decided to focus on urban camping and basically getting rid of it. We decided it was a problem in 2026, and since then we found $1.3 million for it. It's not all staff wages. There are a lot of side costs and costs that we're not even considering, like our costs to our court system, which I think is one that we all need to consider because it's still a tax, it's still taxes that we have to pay for. And it's one that we don't know because we don't know what costs are going to come through our court system from year to year. We just have to pay for whatever comes through. And we've actually created a policy that is increasing court costs, but we're not taking them into consideration as per the harm. I struggle with the fact that we've dropped service complaints for 2/3 from our community, because at what cost to our most vulnerable have we dropped these complaints from the community? So I would like some, if possible, some clarification about how these costs really do break down in 1400.250, because purchase services and professional, and specifically professional services at $546 are separate from wages and benefits in my analysis.
All right, so there's a question in there. I think the $1,400, I think speaking to the delineation of the accounting line item will be helpful for Counselor Jordan. And then please speak specifically to the professional services that are budgeted for in that line item in terms of the actual expenditures. Thank you. Sorry, I turned that off in hopes that I could stop the feedback.
Yeah, Erin, Payan, CPDI. I can start and talk about some of those broad categories, and then I don't know if finance has anything to add. So of the expended approved budget, the direct staff costs are the wages and salaries for those enforcement officers and vehicle permit program staff. That is around $500,000. Purchase services does include our biggest line item, which is the Black Knight security contract. And Black Knight is a key partner in helping us support people in maintaining their parking permit, helping to check on folks, helping us manage conflict with adjacent businesses. They also provide support in our parks and adjacent to the Poverello Center and inside the Poverello Center at their request as well. And then that is the bulk of that purchase service category. We expended, I believe, in this past fiscal year, a little over $400,000 on those services. The rest of that purchase service category is trash, towing, those kind of support services that come with maintaining that program and cleaning up those most often abandoned camps across our community. And then there are some miscellaneous costs. Those include some of the overtime for police, for public works employees, supplies, notification supplies and things like that, just to do the work. It includes a healthy amount of PPE supplies as well. We have to constantly make sure that our folks are protected when they're in the field doing these cleanups. They're oftentimes coming into contact with different substances, needles, and so we have to spend a good amount of money in training on PPE as well.
Thank you. Councilor Jordan, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, you bet. Councilor Nugent?
Thank you. I have no questions. I'll just let you know that tying it to the kind of encampment cleanup feels like two separate conversations to me. And I think there's a much broader community conversation because one of the things in that conversation is if there's stuff left behind from a camp that people leave, we do have to clean it up and we have to pay for it. And there's that. If there's some version of Mr. Campbell's amendment or friendly amendment that includes unspent funds, vacancy savings, and grant funds and gives that permission, if one or more of those is combined to solve this, I would support that. But I won't support it if it's tied to pulling back on the encampment cleanup.
Thank you, Councilor Nugent. And Councilor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we address even that, I'm just wondering, I'm guessing in my mind, I'm working off the presumption that since tonight's budget night, we have to dispense of this amendment first. There is no tabling, because I feel like in some ways we're close on this to having some kind of breakthrough. We could at least put together, a hope of, grant funding combined with, savings that might be realized in these quarterly reports. And it would be great if we had more time to dissect that a little bit more. But am I correct in thinking that this has to be dealt with tonight by law, that we can't do the budget and come back and do amendments? Because we have done budget amendments after budgets have passed, generally speaking.
So you are correct in that this has to be dispensed this evening because this is a budget amendment that Councilor Jordan has brought forward for fiscal year 27 budget as part of this process. And the council voted on and agreed upon schedule and process for amendments. This does not stop council from bringing back a resolution or an expenditure later. But to increase taxes, that is not, like, for example, if you wanted to increase taxes, which is in the fiscal note, that's tonight. If you want to direct the city and the administration to spend down savings, you could do that later. You could do that tonight. You could do that later. But if you want to incorporate it in terms of FY27's budget with an associated revenue source, either through taxes or as Counselor Jordan has proposed, defunding other programs, we would need to do that tonight. Dale, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, the biggest deadline driver we have related to this is the fixing of the levies, which is one of the motions that Councillor Savage read. And so if the intent is not to do that, really because this is a one-time budget item, it could come as an amendment later on, certainly.
Okay. Counselor Anderson?
Thanks so much. I just wanted to kind of clarify on that, Madam Mayor, in terms of if in 2 months there was a grant available that had a specific amount for matching, say $50,000, a budget, and the money was coming from vacancy savings or from a different line item in parks because they're like, hey, yeah, we could save a little here and pinch a little there. That can be discussed at any point in time outside of today, at any point in the future. So this doesn't stop this conversation by, saying, hey, it's just whether or not you actually want to bake it into the budget right now and allocate a certain funding source, which the funding source that's being presented is to take away from parks or encampment cleanup. So is that a correct assessment of that? This can be ongoing as long as you're not trying to like, oh, well, let's just add another whatever to Parks Department taxes to pay for this. That has to be done this evening.
That is correct. Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I guess with all that said, as far as the here and now, I guess I'm kind of in the same frame of mind as my colleague, Councillor Nugent, with being uncomfortable with this nexus between urban camping and resources needed for that and what we're trying to accomplish with this amendment. I can't be supportive of anything that affects that particular program, the urban camping program. But I would be amenable to changing this up to where, we prioritize the allocation of any, savings that are found in quarterly reports along with grant funds. The only question I would have that I'm thinking of now coming out of that is, maybe this is for Dale, but as we do these quarterly reports, say we get into quarter 3 and we're not quite there, maybe no grants have shown up, maybe we're not quite there with reallocating funds. We get to quarter 4. Let's say we never hit that goal, then what would happen to, that money? If we're directing you to set that aside to build that up, if we never reach that goal, then what happens?
Dale Bickle, for example, in the Parks District, if they have budgetary savings, those stay in that fund, right? And in my example earlier, where they did get some cash above their reserve targets, they did propose uses of that in this budget related to the items we described. And so that, but what the amendment you're describing is that that council would essentially predetermine the priority related to the type of funding, and that's what we would look at doing then is setting that aside, and also I'm sure Parks would get going on figuring out what the scope of work and what the and kind of the body of people that could help us, so we could kind of understand. It's we haven't done requests for proposals like this, so understanding the information we need. Time, we have time. During even while budget performance is being measured, time to refine a scope of work, understand the lay of the land, and really dial down what we think a good budget estimate is as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, I can't speak for other colleagues, but I do have concerns about the urban camping nexus, and I think the only viable path forward, as I see it at this point, is looking at quarterly savings and directing staff set that aside, along with exploring grant opportunities that could maybe shrink that gap of what's required from potential savings.
All right. Thank you for your questions. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. And so procedurally, the friendly amendment has been, I mean, it's not on the table.
Correct.
And I mean, it would somewhat also be dependent on, you'd have to allocate what fund that money would have to come for now. Whereas if all continued conversation were to happen, we wouldn't have to basically, make Dale's life miserable by making sure that he's constantly tracking that we allocated this particular money for this particular thing, because what if it comes out of, I don't know, wastewater or something like that, that we can't use wastewater for general fund. So it has to be a general fund money. And so I think working with Dale, Mr. Bickle, would you think that if we want to encourage Parks Department to find a grant, that wait for them to have more details brought before us and then make a budget amendment at that time, at some point in the future?
Yes, and I think that's how I understand Councillor Campbell's proposal as well, is that he's just, how I'm interpreting is he's essentially asking council to set a priority, and that then at the time that we figure out a funding source, understand if there's a grant source, figuring out the scope of work, we would bring that to council as a budget amendment at that point.
Okay. It does appear that we have wrapped up all council questions. We do want to open the floor to public comment on this agenda item, on this amendment. So at this time, we'll go ahead and start with public comment. Councillor Jordan, do you have another question?
Are we in questions? Because I guess my question is, I do have a question, thank you.
Okay.
I do have a comment as well, but I would like to make sure, it's kind of a blend. I just want to thank everybody for the conversation, first of all, and the creative thinking here from Mr. Campbell. I would like to make sure that these potential savings aren't contingent on finding grant funds, because Ms. Anderson had a quick look and said there are a bunch of grants that would fill this very purpose. I could get on and find a bunch of grants to tick any box we're looking to spend money on in the city. And so it's not an accurate read on how available grant funds are for this type of a project. They exist. Getting them is a completely different story. And so I'd like to make sure that Mr. Campbell's creative thinking isn't constrained by finding a grant of some kind, because I think that it's a really viable way forward. And I guess my next question is that who's going to be looking for grants and who's going to be writing them? So I just want to make sure that the original motion Mr. Campbell presented isn't constrained by some sort of grant contingent. Grants are great, be awesome, but we found a way forward, I think, and I want to make sure that it's not constrained by some hidden hurdle that requires a grant option.
Councillor, I think when I heard you, Councillor Campbell, I heard you say, if there is a budget amendment, if there's unexpended revenues that could be allocated for this purpose. Like I mentioned earlier too, this city Parks and Recs, the Parks District, the Parks and Rec Department has a fund that we receive philanthropic grants for help with our after-school program. That fund is the vessel that we use to receive dollars that are not tax dollars for special programs like after-school camps and coordination with our District 1 schools. That fund could also receive philanthropic dollars in the form of a grant, in the form of gifts, whatever that looks like to help advance this work. So that's what I would think. Now, if we had, let's say we are 6 months into fiscal year 27 and we have spent less Park District money for one reason or the other than we expected, and there was that could be earmarked for this purpose. Looking to Lee, Eric, or Dale, just to be clear, I don't know that it would flow through that fund or not, but we could identify it. And maybe you could just speak to the mechanics of that a little bit.
I do think that the Park District is likely the best opportunity to get these savings. Obviously, savings in the general fund, we are working hard to help build the cash reserves in that fund back up to policy levels. So that's one thing I would say. I guess, and I also would caution that there is also Parks always works at building their fund balance. It's a good incentive for department to be the beneficiaries of the department savings that they get. And so those allocations, but the allocations to the scholarship program or deferred maintenance on parks items. This is what council is doing, is prioritizing those aspects over this. And so to the extent that that funding is necessary next year, that it may not be there. But that's a clear priority discussion that councilors should be making.
Councilor Campbell?
I guess in light of that, and so I see Councilor Jordan's point about not being solely grant driven, dependent on this. I mean, it may happen, it may not happen, and to sink or swim based on whether or not you get a grant, I see is concerning to you. But by the same token, I think a grant of some sort in combination with, trying to fund these, savings throughout the course of the year, if nothing more, as I understand it, a lot of these grants require some sort of matching anyway. I mean, you're not going to get a grant that I've seen for 100% of $150,000. I see Councilor Anderson shaking his head that that's possible, or you're agreeing, or?
I agree that it's hard to find matching
Okay,
grants
all right.
for entire project.
If you knew one that did find 100%, I'd like to hear it, because that would save us a lot of time. I guess, I haven't said the magic word, so I move we amend Ms. Jordan's ordinance to state that we direct staff to prioritize any sort of eligible savings from or quarterly budget reports, and direct that money towards Ms. Jordan's project with the clause that there has to be some sort of grant achieved that likewise could cover this endeavor. Boy, that's a really complicated motion. I guess my intent there is that we don't rely solely on park revenue or park district revenue or any sort of savings, that there has to be a grant option there, but I think it widens the opportunity to fulfill this program become reality if we have that set aside where we could take some of that savings, apply it toward a grant. Just makes it more likely that we could well, if we only find a grant that's worth $50,000, we have a matching, then hopefully there's savings there that we could use. If it's a $100,000 grant, then we need a little bit more. But to me, the intent there is to use directing staff to prioritize savings, kind of bridge the difference, a bridge loan, if you will, between what could be achieved with any sort of grant we do come up with and the amount of money needed to complete the study.
Okay, Ms. Trimble, do you have the formulation of an amendment to the amendment?
No. I mean,
Mr. Campbell?
No.
Can we take a 10-minute recess, and maybe I can sit down with my colleague, Ms. Jordan and Claire, and we can work out language? That makes sense.
Yes, it's 8 p.m. We can take a 10-minute recess. That sounds good. And before we do that, Ms. Becerra, I see your hand is raised. One last is it a question? Or a statement?
Yes, a statement, and maybe this will complicate your conversation even further, but I feel like we got a quote, if you will, from our Parks Department between 75,000 and 150. That's quite a bit of a difference. And I think that if we look at this as a project, there are several steps that I think we might be missing. And one of them is we clearly don't have the money in hand to just say, sure, let's do it. So we need to try to find it. One way to do that would be through grants. The federal cycle starts in October. That could be a really good way to start looking for something. Yes, most of them require a 20 to 30% match, local match, which I think it's a lot more palatable if, than $150,000 from our general fund or whatever it's coming from. If that is not a viable option, then I do think we need to have an RFQ or an RFP, something from consultants that can give us a more realistic number for how much does a study like this cost? So we're not later looking at potentially more than $150,000 for a study. So I think we're missing some information, and I think that I would just like to throw it out there that maybe the friendly amendment should also include something that narrows down that amount of money that we would be on the hook for.
Thank you for that, Councilor Becerra. And I know this was a long time ago now, but I attempted to include some of your same sentiments in my remarks at the beginning. I'll just reiterate that when Parks and Rec Director Yoshioka presented on the council floor with an indication that we would need some outside consulting help to think how we would basically rework our existing approach to developed parks. With all due respect, she has not had the time to think through the specifics of that scope. So there's a lot more work to be done there. And that's when she was asked, what would this cost? It's a swag number, 75,000 to 150. Honestly, consultants, as we all know, that's not a far off cry. I would like to get that number down, but we have a lot of work to understanding how we even define the scope of work on this. So with that,
I can try.
Okay.
I would combine the two to read, direct staff to prioritize allocation of any eligible savings from quarterly budget reports in the Parks District towards funding the one-time consultant-led study of organic and natural maintenance systems for up to $150,000. The amendment should not be contingent solely on grant funding, but allow for a combination of savings and grants to fulfill the project.
Well done, Ms. Trimble. I'm hearing from Councillor Campbell that meets the intent.
I think it does. I think it's a merging of, exploring grant options in combination with, any sort of savings that, could be directed by staff to be allocated to this. Look, at the end of the day, I mean, even that option isn't an absolute, sure thing. I mean, in terms of, if there really is a grant out there, can we say for sure now it is? No, we can't. Can we say for sure that we'll find enough savings, absent grant amount, $150,000 max for this? No, we can't see that either. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's, I think it improves our chances to do this in a way that we could get support from this body to move forward, because I think the nexus with urban camping is not going to be a winning strategy, just quite frankly. I think this is the best way forward.
Okay, so to be honest, I'm a little lost. Because we have the amendment on the floor is this now another friendly amendment? No, that's your actual amendment that we need to dispense of.
I never did.
Okay, thank you. The friendly amendment failed, so this is an amendment on the amendment.
But
No.
Yeah,
The initial.
Yeah, hurling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
What I meant earlier, sorry, when I used the word friendly amendment, it was because Councillor Campbell had a friendly amendment some time ago, and that failed, so he's now making a motion to amend.
Okay.
Got it.
I'll withdraw previous, and if there was something on the floor, I'll withdraw that and go with.
There's a motion to amend.
Claire just put out I offer it to you as a friendly amendment.
So this one now?
This one? now?
Yes, okay, I will take it as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
I do have a comment, though, about the nexus between urban camping that I think is really critical. And the only reason why I want to say it is that we found these funds in the last 2 years. And that was an example of how we can be creative with our budgeting as well. And so I wanted to take it from urban camping because it's a new funding district. And it's also causing problems, in my opinion. So thank you for letting me get that out.
Okay, you are welcome. The friendly amendment has been accepted. So I'm going to turn it over to the public for public comment on this agenda item. So first person for public comment, please come up. Please say your name for the record. You can adjust the microphone stand so we can make sure we hear you. And I'll keep track for you on time up front here.
Awesome. My name is Laura Sranches. I'm a student at Hellgate High School here in Missoula, and I urge the City Council to approve this budget amendment to better understand organic land management. Today, I want to take a look into the past to understand how land management decisions have influenced the world that we have today. To start, we've been using synthetic pesticides for over 90 years and have known of their harmful effects for 75 or more of those years, yet their use has only grown. As a kid, I remember fishing the Clark Fork with my father and eating the fish that we caught. Today, fish consumption advisories warn against this, stating that every single fish in the Clark Fork is too contaminated with toxic PFAS and other contaminants to eat. I was an avid butterfly catcher as a child. Today, I watch as an insect apocalypse grows and as we lose 9% of the world's insects each year. And I know that pesticides kill or harm 3.5 quadrillion insects in the US annually. Since I was born, study after study has warned of the dangers of pesticides. When I was a toddler playing in our parks, I was part of a generation exposed to glyphosate, which is now ubiquitous in the urine of 87% of American children. We have known we cause harm with these poisons for decades, and now faced with the realities of the mental health crisis, of the infertility crisis, of the chronic disease crisis, and many, many more, I hope we can remember that pesticides increase the probability of depression by 90%, that 2,4-D, used by the city of Missoula, can increase the probability of Parkinson's by 300%, that individuals directly exposed to pesticides are 3.7 times more likely to be infertile. These crises are linked to pesticides. For years, I have watched us spray a variety of pesticides in the name of weed eradication, yet today I can't think of a single park in Missoula that is weed-free. I have watched us poison the world and ourselves while failing to control the introduced species. Shouldn't we explore a safer alternative? The planetary boundaries are a set of the 9 planetary systems most vital in supporting life on Earth. Each of them should be within Earth-safe operating space to avoid destabilizing Earth's life-supporting systems and avoid causing irreversible environmental harm. In 2009, the year after I was born, 3 of the 9 planetary boundaries had crossed the safe operating space. Today, 7 of them are well outside of what is safe, the boundary being farthest exceeded that for chemical pollution. Missoula citizens have called for organic parks for at least 9 years, and I have seen very little improve in that time. Please approve this budget amendment. I want to see things change for the better, and this is our chance to do that.
Thank you very much for your comments, Lawrence. Appreciate it. Next up for public comment on this agenda item, please come on up.
All right, I'm back again. So, I'm Levi Narum. I'm from Ravalli County. So, you want to deal with pesticides? Just ban them. That's my response. Every year you spend doing increases on these budgets, and it's getting a little tiring. My goodness. I'd like to maybe see an audit of what the money is getting spent on by an independent organization, because I can't figure it out either. You want to get rid of the pesticides? Just ban it. Say, in this Missoula County or whatever city council, I'd say ban pesticides, period. So I suggest figuring something out, because a 3.8% increase in tax, again, is getting really tiring. Montana already pays a high property tax in general across the nation. Let's not keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Levi. All right. Anybody else up for public comment on this agenda item?
Thank you, Gwen Hoppy. I'm in support, I guess, of the friendly amendment. I prefer the first one, but that would be better than nothing. And I don't know if you've ever considered going into some of these 3% wage increases. I see some people are getting paid very well out there, and a few of them, and some of the other grants and things like, not grants, but like supporting the MEP, could have wheedled some out of there. But for now, thank you for the effort to try to make this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppy. Anybody else for public comment on this agenda item?
Hi, my name's Mary Giuliani. Thank you for bringing this amendment forward. It was actually really disappointing to hear how much there was hair splitting of where money can come from. There is a $100,000 grant going to the Missoula Economic Partnership. They're a private entity. Their CEO, Grant Keir, makes over $180,000 a year. His salary has increased $30,000 in the last 2 years. So clearly they are not hurting for money. We could be using our taxpayer money to support what taxpayers want and have been asking for a very long time. $35,000 to go to a social media campaign, I think is shameful. That is embarrassing to use money in that way when, again, it is our taxpayers' money. Dale, you make over $170,000 a year. Many of you sitting here make over $150,000 a year. So again, Mayor, you make over $120,000 a year. It seems like we could be using taxpayer dollars to ensure a livable future, to ensure that people who have grown up in Missoula can continue to live in a healthy way. So I just think it's mind-blowing to me how money is getting spent. This idea of a grant, Councilor Anderson, you run.
Point of order, you actually need to address the chair.
You do. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Giuliani, direct all comments to the presiding officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, there was also some confusion about point of orders, how those work. My aunt was point of ordered when we came in here to talk about the council rule that was broken when Councilor Savage broke her, or vacated her seat. So it's good to know
Let's stick to the agenda item.
Point of orders are supposed to be used.
You've only got a few seconds left.
So you have a counselor that runs a dark money organization. Instead of funneling money in to influence local elections,
Point of order, I
could
think
ask,
this is completely off the topic
maybe you could
that
ask
we're
for
supposed to be addressing
donations
right now.
to go towards the park fund, that philanthropic pot that we have there, that we can get donations to. That seems like it would be a better use of donors' money. Thank you.
Next up for public comment, anybody wishing to make public comment on this agenda item, and I will remind you that it is public comment on this agenda item, which is the amendment to the budget specific towards how we are funding an organic parks feasibility study. Not seeing any in the room. Not seeing any online. That wraps up our public comment on this agenda item. Okay. I'll bring this back to council deliberation, and I see that your hand is raised, Councilor Savage.
I was just wondering if Ms. Trimble could read the last part of that friendly amendment one more time. The grants part is specifically what I'm interested in hearing about.
Let me share my screen. Direct staff to prioritize allocation of any eligible savings from quarterly budget reports in the Parks District towards $150,000 for one-time consultant-led study on an organic and natural maintenance system for Parks and Recreation. The funding should not be contingent solely on grant funding, but allow for a combination of savings and grants to fill the project cost. I'm going to add up to.
You're welcome. Up to 150,000. Thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Jordan, before Councillor Jordan, let's hear from Mr. Bickle.
Now that I see this, I'd like to just make one potential recommendation to this, is that even within the Park District, there are restricted funds from other grants or other sources. And I would, just to make sure that we're clear on this, it's just that I just want to make sure the word eligible is in there. And I actually now see it, eligible savings from quarterly budget reports. So I think that covers that. Sorry about that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Was that a change to the wording? Oh, okay.
You had it.
Okay.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, I guess I have a question and a comment. In hearing it in my mind, I heard that we didn't have to have grant funds to also use the savings. When I read this, it looks like in order to access any savings from quarterly budget reports, we also have to have grant funding. Is that how this is reading? Because that's a no for me.
It is saying it's not contingent solely on grant funds, but allow for combinations of savings and grants to fulfill the proposed cost. So if it was all savings, I think that would be a permissible use if there was up to 150,000. But it's basically saying a combination of those two, if even available.
Yeah, I think I'd want it to just be a little clearer and say that if no grant funding is available, we can still access any savings found in quarterly reports.
Ryan, I'm going to look to you for a second. There was a friendly amendment taken on the floor. So now we have an amendment that was agreed upon. We heard public comment on that. It's getting a little sloppy here. I'm looking to just either dispense of an item if we need to pick it back up again. This amendment on the floor, is it permissible to amend it as another friendly amendment? Or should we just dispense of this as this current amendment and then I'm looking for some guidance here.
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be to just, let's see if Councilor Jordan and Mr. Campbell can work on a set of friendly amendments that they can agree on and then vote on that. So we can.
That sounds good. Let's get her done. Okay.
So I am correct in that you are requiring grant funds to be required in order to access any savings found in quarterly reports? Or if no grant is available, can we still access these savings? But what I'm trying to clarify.
Bob, I think your microphone's off.
Sorry. If it can be done with the grant, great, but ideally it would be a combination of the two, but does it require a combination of the two? No, the way I read this wording, it doesn't require a combination. That's the way that's the way I look at the wording of this.
I mean, if we were going to take a little break a minute ago, we could take a 5-minute break and I could sit down with both of them. I don't have the language up in my computer, so I don't actually know what it says, but I'd be happy to try and wordsmith it so we can get to that point.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do see that Ms. Trimble has continued to edit in order to capture the intentions. So let's take a look at that real quick.
I was just going to recommend replacing a combination of with either, but allow for either savings and or grants to fulfill the project cost.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that looks great.
Great. Thank you. I think problem solved. Thank you.
Okay, great. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm agreed. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Mr. Bickle? Hand is raised? Okay. Mr. Campbell, your hand is raised. We did? Oh, okay. Thank you. Ms. Jones. Councillor Jones.
So I just want some clarity on this idea of creating a priority for any potential savings and what we're doing is we're making a decision when we don't really know what the opportunity cost, and either the mayor or staff, if you can speak a little bit more to this, this is the fund that we pull, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the fund that we pull funds for children's camps and scholarships and deferred maintenance from. And is there a chance that we're going to be cutting off those opportunities because we've made this priority this summer, not truly understanding how much it's going to cost or if there's grant opportunities? So can we speak a little bit more about this opportunity cost? Because that's my concern, because I think we would have a lot more information later on in the year. I think there's a lot of shared values here. It's just a question of how to get there. So I don't want to be tying our hands with a decision that later on we're like, wow, that actually was a pretty high price, when we could have gone about it in a little bit different way.
It does. So the way that the current fund that allocates money towards, that we've already proposed in the budget to fund things like after-school care, that money is identified and in the budget. What we're saying is, if there is a combination of savings in parks and or if we find a grant source, so it would be revenue on top of what already is allocated towards childcare. If a grant came in specific for childcare, I would think it's so different than this that it wouldn't be competing with this directive. So, for example, if we were to bring in additional grant dollars to support more kids after school or more Parks and Rec programs, I do not believe it would be specific enough for that use that it would not be competing with this. So we will be basically watching for vacancy savings or other kinds of savings that might come about through the year to allocate towards this effort, and or looking towards grant resources to allocate towards this effort.
So if we get a grant in to go towards childcare or scholarships or something like that, and it needs some level of a match, we will still pull from the savings fund. And because we have that grant secured, that will be deemed a priority in that category. Am I correct in that? I'm just trying to figure out when we're going to be cutting off an opportunity from ourselves, because we're making a decision tonight that we don't really know the full information around.
Yes, I mean, I think it's throughout the course of the year, if there was to be another opportunity that would come our way where our team was to apply for a grant, and it would require a match, and that match availability was revenue through expenditure savings, we may lose that opportunity. We won't know until we're there. The other opportunity we're trying not to decrease the parks ending fund balance, because that is a reserve that we try to maintain. That would be another option, but that wouldn't be my recommendation today. Mr. Bickle, do you have something to add to that?
I also think that we do a pretty good job as staff as when we would bring an item like this forward, understanding the competing interests and potential trade-offs, if that's what you're getting to a little bit, Counselor. I think, the scholarship funds that we have set aside in the budget in more recent years has been always funded one time, and they're relying on it. Could that be? Will this compete with that? Yes. But to the extent we can, but all of these priorities are important to us, and in parks. So those are the kind of things. This direction will help us prioritize, but it's not going. We won't necessarily do this without essentially informing council of all of the trade-offs as we go through the process. Does that make sense?
Follow up.
Please.
So in other words, it will come back to us, and at that point we will have more information, more contextual information, and be able to make a decision on those opportunity costs. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, for sure. So I'd like much more clarity on the scope of work, on what we would accomplish in the study, and what potentially what are the lost opportunities that that this funding would not be funding at the same time? Yeah, those are all kind of the pieces that we would want to work on with council when we make this decision.
Okay, so, and one last, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically then it's a motion to direct staff to look into this, figure out the parameters, see if there's grant opportunities, see if there's savings opportunities, and then come back to us. Am I correct?
I would say it's a little more than that. I mean, I mean, the council is saying us, this is a priority of council, and that we are, you know, staff figure this out. Let us know everything we need to know related to it, but it is a priority. That's how we're going to interpret this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And Councillor Nugent.
Thanks. Dale, you pretty much answered this, but I was just going to confirm if right now, if there was money in the extra fund and we wanted to move that for scholarships, we'd have to make a budget amendment. Like, it would come through normal process. So realistically, if Parks wanted to do that, they could do that and come ask us no matter what.
Yes, if any amendment process, I mean, that's essentially happening in this FY27 budget with the appropriations that are in there. But yes, if so, and that happens throughout the year. You'll see departments come in with, hey, we have some. Recent one is Missoula Water, where they added a staff person based on some vacancy savings, some revenue opportunities.
Thanks. I just wanted to kind of further clarify that if there's an opportunity that a department likes, in this case Parks, they could still come and ask for it. So thanks.
Thank you for your questions. Councillor Becerra.
I think my questions have been answered, but I get process-wise for this, would we know what the scope of the study is before the department staff applies for a grant, or is that too like in the weeds and we just let them do what they know they need to do? I mean,
I honestly can't answer that question. I mean, I would think that we would know the scope before we would apply for a grant, depending on the kind of grant that we see. I mean, that we find. Naturally, in order to be an effective grant proposal, I think narrowing the scope as much as possible and having that level of specificity would be necessary to have as much chance of getting the grant.
Right. And I ask because I think that if it comes to us, then that becomes, it would necessitate a public hearing with public input on that, or is that done administratively, you think?
I think it's done administratively.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I wouldn't be aware of any grant of this scale or size that would require a public hearing to apply for it, at least. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Not, then we can vote. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, I just want to make a final comment. I feel disappointed because I spent hours trying to find ways to fund something that's really critical to ensure that we attain our climate goals, and something that we're hearing regularly from the community that they want, that they've been working hard on. I'm disappointed in my colleagues who watered down the amendment to the amendment. You know, as people who actively support Montana conservation voters, this should be something that's high on your priority list as far as finding funding for. We are every day contaminating our drinking water. Every day. Every day we put pesticides on this earth, we are contaminating Missoula's water. And I don't know why that's not important. I don't know why we don't take the time to find the money for this one-off project that we've been asked to do over and over and over again, so that we can get to the answers, so we can put out an RFP, we can find out how much it's going to cost, so that we can achieve our climate goals. We all know that herbicides and pesticides cause harm. What are the long-term costs that we're kicking down the road? I've already been through cancer. I have no idea where it came from. No idea. And we have a precious, precious resource of a sole source aquifer, EPA designated, that we are continuing to not put as a priority. As one public commenter said, we cannot eat the fish out of the Clark Fork, and that is because we're not doing our part to take care of our water. And the reason why I drew the encampment comparison is values. The encampment comparison was used because in the last 2 years, we have decided that not looking at homeless people is worth $1.3 million that we didn't have funding for 2 years ago. But something that we've been hearing about for decades, that the public has asked us for, that is a nominal fee, can't get funding. So that is why I drew the homeless comparison, because those are values. And we just took making sure we don't see homeless people and put it clear up here, and keeping our sole source aquifer clear down here. And that is why I opted to take the funding out of the encampment fund, because it's a brand new fund. It reflects our city's values, doesn't reflect my values, it doesn't reflect our public's values, and it is really disappointing.
Thank you for your concluding comments, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually think that we used to hear a lot from you, Ms. Jordan, about how we don't talk things through on the floor. And I feel like we just talked this through on the floor for quite a bit of time. And I understand the part of this conversation, but I think we got it to a place where we are giving Parks Department the permission to do this. I will say that the years and years that the city of Missoula and previous versions of this body spent going through the condemnation process and taking over our water system to save it from corporate greed and all of that really speaks to a different stance on how this city feels about protecting our water. And I think that there's a broader picture here. I also think that a lot of the reason that there are issues with the fish in the Clark Fork have nothing to do with pesticides on parks in Missoula, but a lot more to do with what's happened above us upstream. So I'll say that I'm a little bit disappointed that after the council working to a point where I think that this is going to get supported, we're being lectured. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think people genuinely worked on this. And I think that the fact that Mr. Campbell has got this to a place where I think he's going to support it shocks me a little bit. So I think that we should take that for the win that it is and keep on going.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Councillor Jones?
So I've been thinking about this amendment ever since the amendments were published. And I will be honest, this is such a difficult budget year that I was not intending to vote yes, but I do feel like we've talked it through on the floor and positioned it to have enough flexibility to make it work this next year. I'm not thrilled with spending future savings, but I think we've talked through it enough with enough parameters so that for this situation, I'm willing to vote yes on it. I, in general, don't like doing that because it's a slippery slope. I don't know how else to put it. But I appreciate everybody's questions and leaning in. This is I think there are a lot of shared values on this issue of wanting to basically go organic. I also think it is an extremely expensive proposition, so it's a lot easier to do the report. I'm hoping that if we can get through this process and a report ultimately is issued, there are a lot of ideas and tools in it, because frankly, we're not going to be able to afford a budget that many other communities in America use to have a completely organic park system. We are never going to be able to afford that. That's the reality. So people need to set their expectations, but there could be some very good things that come from this report that will give us tools to continue to mitigate and go forward in terms of mitigation. So that's my goal, and I'm willing to support it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other comments before we take a roll call vote? Okay, Ms. Trumbull, I'm not seeing any additional hands raised or folks are around the dais, so we'll do a roll call vote on Councillor Jordan's amendment.
Yes, voting on Councillor Jordan's amendment as previously read, beginning with Anderson. Yes. Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
McCoy,
Yes.
Melson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Ponton,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
and Cheryl.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all very much. Appreciate the extensive conversation. Thank you to members of the community that came down for public comment. We do need to make it through the rest of the budget. I'll go ahead and give us a brief recess just for a stretch our legs and use the restroom before we get started again. So it's 8:37. I'll see you back here at 8:45. Thank you. 1 minute. That was Oh my God, please. Oops. Okay, folks, thank you very much for your graciousness in the break there. It is 8:45 p.m. and welcoming us back to the City Council meeting, 8:45 p.m., August 17th, 2026. We've spent the first part of our meeting amending the budget, so amending, I'm assuming it's item 6.1. Actually, I think it's probably good for for clarification on what of the items we're actually amending with Councilor Jordan's amendment, just so we're clear about that.
The actual documents were located in item 6.1 for reference, and that's where the minutes will appear, but I don't think anything is being altered in the numbers or any of the actual dollar amounts that we'll be voting on this evening.
Great. Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's a good point. That's right. No dollar amounts are amended. So, okay, item 6.1. Motions are made, put on the floor. We heard staff updates earlier, so no additional staff information for this part of the presentation. Motion's been on the floor already, and so I'm going to turn it over to public comment, and then there'll be opportunity for questions from City Council and or comments. So we'll just bring it right back to council deliberations. So let's open it up to public comment on the FY27 city budget. Come on up. Susan, you can adjust that if you need to make it more comfortable.
I'm Susan Renault. I live on Martha's Court off Garrett Street in District 5, Ward 5. I'm here because I am the only one remaining that I guess is here to talk about the budget. I don't know, a few other people will. But I have the distinction of being a property owner. And in that regard, I foot the bill for all of this. And any of us who own property do that. And if we rent, we foot the bill through our rent, because if taxes go up, if property taxes go up, it will be passed along with the renter. I'm in retirement. I am blessed because I organized myself starting at the age of 14, and when I needed extra money, I got another job. So I wanted, in the order of these proposals, and I think that's what I'm supposed to go off of, I want to say that my priority is the funding of roads, sewers, water, police, firefighters, computer maintenance, and the overall operation to keep our city going. And number one, in my opinion, is safety. I support the Road District 1 work plan. I don't know what it costs. So I don't know what it costs. I'm in favor of the business improvement district, but I oppose any levy because firefighters and medical staff and EMTs need to be funded within the confines of the budget that I pay for. So those are my priorities. I have been to many, many cities and many, many communities. Missoula has the distinction of having one of the finest park systems that I've ever been to. I've lived in 11 states. So I think we're doing well with parks. And I think we need to put more of our money into the areas that I mentioned. So when you go to vote on a budget, I hope that you will consider me because I'm a property owner and I'm the one that pays for all of this along with all the people who are property owners. And I think I've said this before, please have mercy on us. And I totally oppose a 4% increase in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. No, for coming down and making comment, sticking it out this evening. Appreciate that. Anybody else in the audience here for public comment on the budget on this agenda item? I'm not seeing anybody. Let me just check online to see if there's anybody online that wishes to make public comment on the adoption of the FY27 City of Missoula budget. I see a hand raised. All right. There's a phone call with the number ending in 1655. I believe you're unmuted from your side. Go ahead and unmute yourself from your side. Phone number ending in 1655. I'll go ahead and time you from this side once I hear your voice. Abner? You're unmuted. Okay. You are unmuted. I see a microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Travis Mateer. This is, I would like to say very humbly, the first and best homeless outreach coordinator. And so as you guys are talking about the budget tonight, I want to speak specifically to urban camping or survival camping and this weird notion that I think exists that it doesn't impact water quality. I've seen lots of urban camping, and I hate to, admit the reality that all human beings share this need to poop and to pee. And so when you're survival camping, you're pooping and you're peeing sometimes on the West Broadway corridor, where more money is going to be spent. I took pictures the other day. Anyone reading my blog, educating themselves about what citizen journalism is, you can see pictures that I took just last Thursday of bullet casings. So speaking of public safety, bullet casings, we'll repeat that, bullets next to drug paraphernalia, needles. I don't think that's a good pairing. I don't think bullets and needles to administer drugs intravenously is a good pairing. And I think that's a public safety issue. I'd like to remind people there are 70, 80, 90,000 people in this valley. And so I get really annoyed myself when I see urban camping, survival camping, overly represented in terms of the amount of time you guys waste. Continue supporting Parks and Rec, doing the difficult job of cleaning up after drug addicts, and continue acknowledging that your policies, have been detrimental and they create more problems. So study that as you will, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of studying it. But you guys are absurd. I mean, it's really absurd what you guys continue to do. More people are paying attention. You schedule the budget at the worst time for people to be involved. Okay, this is before school's about to start. Okay, at the end of summer, this is the absolute worst time for public involvement in the budget in which their taxes are going up because you continue to use mechanisms like tax increment financing like addicts yourself. So I hope you guys get help. I hope you guys get an intervention someday. Get into recovery. It's cool. Recovery is awesome. Bye.
Bye, Travis. Thank you for your comments. All right. Not seeing anybody else with their hand raised online. Okay. That looks like we have no more public comment on this agenda item. So we'll bring it back to council deliberations. Any questions or comments from council members? FY27 budget. I know we've had many conversations already leading up to this point. This is final adoption. Questions or comments? Councilor Jordan.
Thanks. I have a comment about the budget generally. I just want to talk a little bit about how this budget lines up with a document that we tell residents guides it, which is our strategic plan, and what tonight's votes say about that alignment. The budget is honest about being tight, no new programs, modest changes, some cost savings. That's a defensible starting point given capped revenues. Defensible as a starting point is not the same as aligned with our own stated priorities. And when I hold this budget against the strategic plan, it does not hold the line in several places that matter. Starting with fiscal stewardship under Pillar 3, because it's the area the administration points to most as evidence of discipline. This reserve build is real, roughly $750,000. The tax increase is 3.8%, but the top line 1.67% growth figure obscures at least 5 unreconciled line item swings, totaling roughly $2.6 million that I just found and haven't had a chance to ask finance about. One of them is a $294,000 swing in a police purchase services with no note attached. Another is a $526,000 transfer in non-departmental labeled only as debt service with no destination fund named. A road district line where the written explanation is $199,000 off the actual number, and 2 more figure swings in a road district and park district with no explanation at all. If we're going to call 1.67% discipline, we should be able to account for every dollar behind it, and right now we cannot. Looking at Pillar 2, safe, healthy, and resilient communities, because this is where the gap between our language and our follow-through is the starkest, and it goes back further than this budget cycle. Our mobile support team, the city's primary behavioral health crisis response, is funded at the same exact dollar amount as last year, not $1 more. Our encampment...
What night was that?
Last night,
Last
older.
night.
But they look like little tiny pets.
Bummer.
All right, looks, we got that. Yep, it's all good to go.
Thank you. Our encampment response fund carries a single modest new request, and our coordinated entry system work is otherwise untouched. And in December 2024, this council voted 9-3 to restore language directing the mayor's office to develop and distribute a resource guide showing residents where they can legally camp and where to find services, water, and bathrooms after the same language had already been stripped from the ordinance once. This was 2 years ago, and no such guide has ever been produced. And this isn't a funding gap; it's a commitment this body made on the record twice that still has not been kept. Same failure shows up again under Pillar 3 in a different form, and it may be more serious. The strategic plan commits the city to tracking its own performance data, so budget decisions are based on outcomes, not habit. I went looking for where FY27 dollars fund that commitment. Response times, emissions, employee turnover, resident satisfaction, coordinated entry outcomes. For nearly all of it, there was nothing. The one exception is a new financial system for internal budgeting and forecasting, which is useful, but it doesn't tell us whether a single program in this budget is working. We set ourselves a goal to know that. We set ourselves a goal to know that, and this budget does not fund the ability to find out. And I want to be really clear about what tonight represents on top of all that. The ADA coordinator amendment was voted down. My original funding mechanism for the organic parks feasibility study didn't pass either. An amended version did, directing future parks, district savings, and grant dollars were available toward $150,000 the study needs. And I am genuinely grateful that my colleagues who worked with me on this to get that far. But I also think that what we actually did is this. We did not fund this study. We funded the possibility of funding it someday if savings materialize in a budget we haven't yet approved. That's not the same thing, and I don't think we should describe it as though it were. Here's a comparison. I've already talked about it. I keep coming back to. In the last 2 years, the city's found $1.3 million in new and shifting funding new and shifted funding for urban camped enforcement, a program that didn't even exist before FY 2025. In that same 2 years, we've not been able to identify $150,000 one time to study what it would take to protect our sole source aquifer, again, the water that everybody drinks, a concern I raised on the council floor tonight. Fish kills in the Clark Ford are not an upstream problem, they're ours. Maybe some of it is an upstream problem, but we're not doing our part. And this study was never only about the river, it was about our aquifer under our own city and whether we're willing to spend a fraction of 1% of what we spend on enforcement to find out what it would take to protect it. That's the pattern I've described tonight in the budget's own numbers and in how we treat our commitments. Our strategic plan says we want houselessness to be rare and brief. It says we want to protect open space and environment. It says we want decisions based on data, not habit. When it comes to enforcement, we find the money, and we find it without a formal budget line asking for it for 2 years. When it comes to prevention, protection, and understanding what we're actually up against, we ask the program to go find its own savings and hope for the best, or we let the resource guide sit unwritten for 2 years after voting twice to require it. I'm not walking away tonight bitter, and I'm not raising any of these issues to relitigate votes. I'm raising it because the pattern is now established across 2 budget cycles, and I think residents should hear it, named plainly, rather than reconstructed after the fact, the way I've had to do it here. Next year, I hope this council will require every department to show its work, which dollars served which goal, and what happened to the commitments we already made. Residents were told this plan drives our budget, and it's time that we make that true. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. And since it has been brought up twice by you this evening, I will mention for folks listening that the Homeless Resource Guide is located on the City of Missoula's website under Unsheltered Living. Okay, is there anybody else, any other council members that wish to make comments? Councillor Jones.
So much to talk about every year with the budget. I want to thank the mayor and staff for working really hard on a really, really lean budget due to circumstances this year. Our budget is stretched thin, and I think we get a huge amount of rate of return on it, frankly. I would love it if we had seen if we were further ahead with our rainy day fund, but as we discussed last week, we had a significant police contract that was negotiated, and the way the accounting worked, a little bit awkward last year, but as that significant police contract, which followed a significant fire contract, came through the budget, it really ate away at our savings. So we're in a position having to build those savings up, and that's hard. That's a hard place to be. So I, first of all, am appreciative to the mayor and staff for doing their best to have an extremely lean budget and position us to be going forward next year. I'm glad that we have contracts with police and fire that pay them well enough so that we keep good people, good experienced people in Missoula, because frankly, that's what it's all about. Other than the organic park study, nothing else got added into the budget and nothing got cut, and that's fine. That's what I wanted to see happen. I do want to point out that elected officials are not taking a cost of living increase this year. Last week when I spoke on the record, I talked about the fact that we have structural issues in our budget. We've had emails from folks who are like, how can you contemplate raising taxes at all? And I want to build some context around that. When I say structural issues, we do our best for the city of Missoula to provide police, fire, municipal court, services for zoning, building permits, code enforcement, HR, IT, public works, roads, all of our utilities. Those are essential services, and we work very hard to provide those in a quality manner. But what's interesting is we are put in a position of having to carefully do these tax raises in order to just maintain those services, much less provide any additional services. And when I say it's structural, it's statewide. So I spent a little time today looking at what's going on around the state. And I think we should be looking at some of these numbers. Billings, 2.7% tax increase. Bozeman, 3.8% tax increase. Kalispell, 3.85. Belgrade, 2.97. Great Falls, 6.5% increase. Helena, I couldn't find if they're doing an increase, but what they are debating, and they voted to do it, is to put a $5.3 million public safety request to the public for the public to vote on. We did that 2 years ago. We're all doing the same thing. We're all of these big 8 cities are doing the same. We're working so hard to provide essential services and yet having to raise taxes. That means it's structural. It's not, Missoula is not an outlier at all. This is happening across Montana. The numbers that I just quoted might change a little bit as those final votes happen, but in general, that's what is happening across Montana. So this is a legislative issue that they're going to have to address. I guess that's all I really wanted to say, but I'm super supportive of our urban camping budget and those services. I hear from people on a regular basis that it's working well, it's essential. I think it means as that works better, then we can turn attention to figuring out how do we try and provide services. But I kind of come back to when we are raising taxes to just hold steady and provide cost of living increases to our staff, we're between a rock and a hard place. So I'm grateful to the mayor and staff for doing the best they can every single year. But this is what we're living in the year 2026 as we head into 2027. And it's only going to get harder unless the legislature takes more action to address things. So I'm voting yes on the budget. That's the bottom line. But I just wanted to provide that information as some context.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Nope, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few minutes, City Council will be voting whether to authorize the mayor to sign a resolution entitled, and this is 6.6, a resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes for the fiscal year 2027. I think as we ponder this action, it's important to understand what a levy is in the context of this resolution. According to Merriam-Webster, a levy is defined as to impose or collect by legal authority. Additionally, for clarification, to impose, in this context, is to establish or apply by authority. Having these definitions, one can more precisely retitle this resolution as a resolution establishing by legal authority the collection of taxes for administrative purposes for fiscal year 2027. Kind of changes the tone, doesn't it? Let's be clear about what this resolution accomplishes. It compels every taxpayer within the city to turn over a certain amount of their money to the city under the penalty of having liens placed against their assets, their property, and ultimately forfeiture of such property. There's that old saying, think you only own property, see what happens when you stop paying your taxes. Of course, the information I just presented is well known to those who own property, own land, have a job, earn interest in savings, bonds, retirements, etc. We all pay taxes in one form or another. But it seems to me all too often our elected officials at many levels fail to keep these things in mind when it comes time to levying taxes themselves. This budget season, as an elected official, I'm charged with the responsibility to deliberate and pass the budget. Set the stage. We enter the FY27 deliberations in the worst fiscal condition than this time last year. The mayor's FY26 budget, we remitted $2 million to our general fund and raised taxes 3.4% in the hopes of increasing our fund balance to $3.4 million and reducing our structural deficit to $2.5 million. We accomplished neither of those, not even close. Add in a serious underestimation of police salaries of over $1.3 million, we ended up lowering our fund balance by $2.4 million and increasing our structural deficit by $900,000. Interestingly, after pointing these numbers out in a previous council meeting, the mayor explained that these were only predictions, and she now claims she wants to move forward with A budget path that could take several years and have predictability. Well, past the prologue, count me as a skeptic. For fiscal year 27, the mayor proposed we again use what she described as one-time remittance from the MRA, another one-time remittance, this time in the amount of $2.5 million. This amount will yield an actual TIF expenditure in excess of $7 million. Additionally, there's a 3.8% tax in order to raise an additional $2.8 million in new spending. Quite the budget path going forward, if I do say so. With the stage now set, we as council have deliberated on the mayor's proposal, described by her as the big boring budget. Part of that deliberation involved amendment proposals. Last Wednesday, the Budget and Finance Committee considered 6 amendments of mine that would drastically cut the proposed tax increase. Importantly, my main budget amendment sought to address wage growth by freezing wage allocations in several departments for their FY26 levels. In this way, department heads had the flexibility to decide how best to manage their staff. This amendment alone would have saved over $1.7 million. It represented, for the first time that I can remember, someone on this body or even the mayor even giving consideration to wages, putting that on the table. Wages represent over 80% of our general fund spending. I believe going forward, there'll be more stress on wages, particularly if there's continued growth of government and the personnel required to deliver services. I sought to rein in training budgets for a one-year time frame for various departments, where then every department has historically received their training budgets they requested, yet managed to make do year after year. I actually looked at increasing certain user and permit fees to shift more cost to actual users rather than ongoing taxpayer subsidies. Nevertheless, some of this is going to be passed tonight under one of the budget items, so I could see this as a partial win here. I sought to limit the city's involvement with Missoula Economic Partnership on what's already accomplished through the MRA. It would have saved taxpayers another $100,000. Looking at some of the recent developments, namely Midtown Crossing, it's the way the city picks winners and losers in the development committee while simultaneously being able to avoid public scrutiny. I looked to cut over $211,000 to the Poverello until such time we could observe with our own eyes the execution of their good neighbor policy, something I haven't seen since dealing with the Poverello myself since 1999. Unfortunately here, they'll get their money and we'll keep paying the cleanup bills and covering security costs around the center, taxpayer expense. Finally, given the fiscal condition of the city this year compared to last, I felt this wasn't the year for the city to algorithmically enhance its social media platforms at a cost of $35,000. Before I make my vote whether to adopt a budget, I must consider several factors, and they all lead to answering one question in my mind. Can I look a constituent in their eyes, tell them in all honesty that the budget I approve is just? Well, at its most basic level, I must be satisfied that the budget accomplishes the effective delivery of basic services, what I call needs. Generally, I believe it does. So this budget adequately funds our emergency services, as well as our public works. Additionally, I believe that we're on the right track when it comes to having new development pay for their fair share for impacts they create to those services. However, there's another important question I ask myself. Whether we've been shown we can make good decisions with the taxpayer dollars that have been allocated the previous year. And I have to be able to say, here's how we spent your dollars last year. List those things one by one and feel good about the information I'm providing. In this test, I feel that we have failed miserably. I give some examples. Spending over $10 million in TIF for the Midtown Commons project, $5 million of which to be reimbursed by a developer interest-free as they sell units. $150,000 in TIF for the library rooftop garden. The $4.4 million road district revenue bond to pay for Missoula water building improvements, an entity that should be solely running on utility revenue. Instead, it created a new mid-year property tax increase all of its own. The publicized removal of, to be removed, $800,000 TIF-funded bridge to nowhere on West Broadway, that's still pending. Previous $200,011 award to the Poverello with no accountability measures in place. The disastrous over budget downtown sand project, what will cost $4, maybe $8 million more in TIF, which is tax money, a project that will increase congestion, decrease parking, nobody running a business downtown really wants. As I pointed out just weeks ago, $1.3 million budgeting area to deal with MPT pay allocations. Spending money this way without complete accountability for every dollar, I can't in any way look someone in the face, say we're making good use of their tax dollars. Now, here we are, asking for more. Passing this budget isn't being responsible. In fact, I see it as an act of cruelty on the taxpayers of Missoula. They're outraged by this budget. They should be outraged. This budget is, in fact, outrageous. And in the end, most troubling, none of my other colleagues offered anything to rein in spending, simply an acceptance of status quo, the continuation of unmitigated growth of government, simply and sadly, acceptance of both what is and what should never be. I will not be in support of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. And just because I did see this in the Missoulian article written last Wednesday, and I did hear you say you had 6 amendments that were cutting expenses. Just for the record, it was 5 amendments cutting expenses. 1 amendment doubled proposed fees, but none of those did pass. So that was accurate. But I did want to make sure that that was accurate for the record. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor, and thanks for that clarification. Also, good to point out that the doubling of fees actually, in some cases, were not actually statutorily allowable. So even if we had passed it, it wouldn't have been able to go into effect. But I'm actually going to take a different tone, and Mr. Campbell and I represent the same ward, and I can look my constituents in the face and feel good about this budget. Is it everything we wanted? Is there hard decisions that had to get made? Yes, absolutely. Would I have loved to have gotten all of the money for the police and fire and all those allocations? No. I would love to have, but weren't able to do it because we had to live within the confines of what we had. And I want to particularly thank Mr. Bickle for all of his hard work. If you were following along with all of the various spreadsheets and calculations that were coming out throughout the many months that we talk about budget. Budget isn't just about when we have it here in the floor. Many of us spend additional time outside of being here on the council floor, meeting with staff, getting our questions answered, figuring out how we can get our priorities funded, if it's possible, so that while you may not see us trying to make sausage here on the floor and therefore think that we are just tacitly, rubber stamping something, I think that that is a incredible inaccurate statement, given the work that I know myself and other colleagues have done. But with all of the new legislative changes and all the various, changing potential numbers, Mr. Bickle got the predictions for what our taxable revenue was going to be within $7,000. That is astonishing. I'm a daughter of an accountant, so, but just the fact that we're talking a multi-million-dollar budget with all sorts of new parameters given to it because of the legislative session and the changes that they made, the fact that he came in so close, I think really shows how incredibly talented and knowledgeable our Missoula staff are. It was pointed out on the floor tonight that what Mr. Bickle makes, because he's a public employee and that is public knowledge. I can guarantee you with that level of skill set, he could be making significantly more in the private sector. And so I am thankful that he answers the call to public service in ways that all of us do in our different roles showing up. But to be able to get $159 million budget down to within $7,000, it's like a 0.00001%. So just wanted to call that on the record, and also understand what a difficult summer he has been having. So I think that there's been a lot said tonight, but I do want to make sure that we don't let that go unsaid, because it is incredible. And I think that that really guides us into making the best decisions that we can with the tax payer dollars. And as Ms. Jones and I have, said numerous times, so much of the things that we are dealing with here are because of decisions that are made farther up the stream at the state level, at the federal level, and yet we're the last line of where it all rolls down to, and we're the ones having to figure out how to give basic services while also create safety nets when that wasn't necessarily what city government was designed to do, but that is the charge that we have been given by the citizens of Missoula. So I will be in support of this budget. It's not a perfect budget. It's a hard budget, and it took a lot of work, both during council meetings and behind the scenes to get to this place. And, I will be in support. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Councilor Anderson, especially for your comments related to the staff, their dedication. The entire finance team worked hard on those projections. Dale will be the first one to point that out, so I'll do that for him since I have the microphone. And we're very fortunate for the dedication across the entire city and all departments for the dedication of our city staff. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. Any other council comments? Council comments before we take a vote? Okay. Not seeing any. So, Ms. Trimble, let's talk about how we're going to do the vote, because we're going to walk down. There's a number of different resolutions, different items, and different motions. Geez, I think, when we have item 6.2, generally speaking, I think we'll just hear these recommended motions separate. Thank you.
We ready for a voting marathon?
Ready for it.
Okay. Beginning with item 6.1. The main motion is a resolution fixing the annual appropriations and the capital improvement program for the city of Missoula. Beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Aye.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
That item had 9 in favor, 2 opposed. It does pass. Moving on to item 6.2, the resolutions levying assessments. We will be voting on the Parks District 1 resolution, the Road District Number 1 resolution, the Tourism Business Improvement District resolution, and saving for a later date the Downtown Business Improvement District. And we are unfortunately going to vote on these separately. Beginning with the resolution for Parks District Number 1, beginning with Campbell.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Aye.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Becerra.
Yes.
That item also has 9 in favor, 2 opposed. It does pass. Next up, we have the Road District Number 1 resolution, beginning with Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Aye.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson. Becerra.
Yes.
And Campbell.
No.
That item also has 9 in favor, 2 opposed. That resolution does pass. Last in this section, we have the Tourism Business Improvement District in the amount, assessing the amount of $4 per occupied room. Beginning with Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
That item has 10 in favor, 1 opposed. That item passes. Oh, yeah. No, Campbell voted no. Is that, or I mean, voted yes. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. 10 in favor, 1 opposed. Moving on to the items under 6.3, the budget, the resolutions adopting fees. We will begin with the Parks and Recreation Master Fee Schedule, and beginning with McCoy.
Aye.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
And Jordan.
No.
That item had 10 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes. The resolution passes. Next up, we have the Public Works Fee Schedule. Beginning with Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Aye.
All right, that has 10 in favor, 1 opposed. That passes. Next up is the CPDI Business Licensing, Land Use, Building Planning Fees section, beginning with Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Yes.
And Melson.
Yes.
Thank you. That has 10 in favor, 1 opposed. That passes. Next up is the fire fee schedule. Beginning with Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
McCoy.
Aye.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
That has 11 in favor, none opposed. That passes unanimously. And the last item on this grouping is the adoption of the impact fee study and increasing certain impact fees. Beginning with Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson. Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
McCoy.
Yes.
Elson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
And Ponton.
Yes.
11 in favor. That also passes unanimously. The next item up is our Street Maintenance District number 1. Begin the vote with Cheryl.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
McCoy.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Ponton,
Yes.
and Savage.
Yes.
That has 11 in favor. It also passes unanimously. Next up is the item 6.5, the street lighting improvements districts. We are back around with Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
McCoy,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Ponton,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
and Cheryl.
Yes.
That has 11 in favor. It also passes unanimously. All right, our final resolution for this evening is item 6.6. It is a resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes for fiscal year 2027. Beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
McCoy.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Ponton.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
And that item has 9 in favor, 2 opposed, and the motion does pass.
All right, thank you all very much for getting through all of those individual motions, and thank you very much for the majority of your support in getting this budget passed. Very much appreciate the recognition of the hard work of the staff here at the City of Missoula, and I'm very honored to work alongside these teams. And I very much appreciate the comments related to the challenge that local municipal governments face when it comes to meeting the incredible demands of the day, given the circumstances that we face in terms of increased pressures from property tax structure, property values, and some of the decreasing services that we see upstream that impact our communities locally. So I'm real proud to work alongside the staff, and I'm real proud to work along the City Council for all of the thoughtful deliberation that you bring to the table, and we will see what ends up happening in this next fiscal year as we continue to address this budget gap thoughtfully and strategically. So with that, we'll move on to our next item. That is an item for completion, and that is our consent agenda. Item number 9, we have a consent agenda. These items were approved in City Council committees to be placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings. So Ms. Trimble is going to read the list aloud, and then we'll take public comment, and we'll then see if there's anybody that would like to separate an item. Ms. Trimble.
All right. On this evening's consent agenda, we have a motion to approve counts payable or claims for checks dated August 18th, 2026 in the amount of $2,380,057.96. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Morrison Merrily for the Headworks Corrosion Control Project at the wastewater treatment plant at a cost not to exceed $142,800. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign change order number 3 to the Harlequin Court Water Main Extension and Momont number 2 Sewer Collection Improvements with Prospect Construction, Inc. for $164,682.59 and increase the budget for the Harlequin Court Water Main Extension project by $150,000. And our final motion on the consent agenda is a motion to approve the resolution relating to $1,107,000 in sewer water system revenue bond, which are DNRC Water Pollution Control State Revolving Loan Program funds, Series 2026B, authorizing the issuance and prescribing the forms and terms thereof.
Thank you, Ms. Trimble. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? Public comment on the consent agenda? Not seeing any in the room. Not seeing any online either. Do any council members wish to abstain or separate any of the items on the consent agenda? Not seeing any. We can do a voice vote, please, Ms. Trimble.
Right, voting on this evening's consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Excellent, thank you. No business items under our regular business. And then we have public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Not seeing any. Okay, that wraps up that agenda item. Communications from the mayor. Unfortunately, nobody's here to, well, there are some folks to hear this. I hope that if you don't get a chance to come out tomorrow, that you'll get a chance to come out and see the North Duncan Trailhead. Tomorrow we're going to be celebrating some efforts that is an awesome partnership in the making for basically after the city acquired Mountain Water and it became Missoula Water, we acquired all the assets. So that included the water rights up the Rattlesnake, that included the dams. And we had a need to basically deal with those assets because the Missoula Water, actually Mountain Water at the time, stopped relying on the Rattlesnake Wilderness area as our water source in the 80s when we had a Giardia scare. We drilled wells all over the valley. So we didn't necessarily need to rely on the water of the Rattlesnake and the dammed water up the Rattlesnake for our water source. And we've been working with partners like Trout Unlimited and others to actually return that to its more natural riparian system. It's a significant, significant project. The benefit of the North Duncan Trailhead is that this is a reservoir loop that includes informational kiosks, and it tells the story of the cultural history of the Rattlesnake Creek and the importance of the area. Importantly, it is also accessible. This is a trail that we've been working on with other groups to make this an accessible trail for all abilities. So real proud of the continued efforts that we make in this area. That address is located at 42 Duncan Drive, if anybody is interested. That's tomorrow afternoon. Of course, you don't have to come to the event. That trailhead will be open to you at your leisure, but the ribbon cutting event is tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then I just wanted to give another shout out. I know that it was mentioned earlier, but we had a fantastic celebration on Friday in terms of the River Access Point project. Saw Councilor McCoy and Councilor Jones and others there. That was just such a fantastic project. Years in the making, incredible persistence, incredible vision. This started out as a way to manage erosion control. And ultimately it is a way in which we can help guide access points for people in and out of the river, creating safe inlets and outlets from people in and out of the Clark Fork River, while we're also able to restore riparian and streamside environments and ecosystem, and create places for which our community gathers together. So it's a very special, wonderful opportunity to celebrate, and just real proud of the work that we continue to do to continue to make more places for people to gather and a more inclusive community, because I think we're doing a really good job. There's always room for improvement, but I am very proud to work alongside you all to continue to get this good work done. All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to council comments. And Councilor Melson, how about I start with you this evening?
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I'll pass tonight.
All right, you bet. Thank you. And Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate the conversation we had tonight, and realize that we're all here to represent in the way that feels best for us. And I don't think anybody's full of malice or has bad intentions. And I am grateful that we have different voices around the council table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. And Councilor Ponton.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I'll pass.
All right. And Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilor Becerra.
I'll pass too. Thank you.
Bet. Councilor Savage.
I'll also pass.
Thank you. Councilor Nugent.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say I appreciate the point that Councilor Anderson made about budget season being year-round. And there are some things that sometimes get proposed that are nearly impossible to do on the floor. But if you work on them over time, sometimes we can get to a place where they might make sense. And I think that that is a takeaway because, we voted tonight to pay police officers, to pay firefighters, to pay roads crews, to pay child camp counselors, to pay lifeguards. And if we don't pass a budget, that doesn't happen. And I know that it's tough because there are lots of things that I would like to see and not see. And I know that you as well and everybody else kind of feel the same way. But the reality is we need to pass a budget. And I appreciate your approach to this each of the years that you've been mayor. I also appreciate the opportunity you've given us to provide feedback. And I know you and I several times in our regular weekly meetings have talked about expenses and things that would be great to fund, but that we could not put in the budget. And I know several other council members have done the same. And I think it's important for people to know that that is part of the bigger process. And, there are some amendments that have been brought forth that may have done different things, but ultimately, I think it's important for people to know what we're voting on. And I did not vote to raise fees even more on building houses, and I did not vote to raise fees even more on softball tournaments, because I think that those also matter. And the same people who are frustrated about the budget and taxes will be frustrated when they go to pull those permits or to do those things. And it all fits together in a weird puzzle. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts on the process, and I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes, but I think that it is not an appropriate scorecard to suggest that if people don't bring amendments, they did not work on the budget. And I believe that every year, and only more so because I think I've talked to every one of you about a budget item at some point in the last few months, and that's all part of working on the budget and working with the mayor to kind of get things in there. So thank you, everybody, for working through another budget system. Maybe it's telling me to be done, but I was going to thank the staff for all their work, so I did turn the microphone back on again, but thank you all.
Thank you, President Nugent. Looking forward to continuing to working on the budget with you. Thank you. Councilor Sherrill.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for working on the budget, and it is a year-long process, and it's a hard puzzle to put together, so thank you for everyone.
Thank you. Jones?
I'll just briefly say, yeah, I had an amendment that I had worked a lot on this year that I would have loved to have brought this summer, but it was not the right time given the parameters of our budget. So sometimes you have to make that call. It doesn't mean that counselors aren't working. But what I also wanted to say was University of Montana students are back. So there's a lot more traffic in town and a lot of energy, which is all great, but pay attention out there. And I think next week or so, the elementary and high schools and middle schools will be starting up. So super important for people to be paying attention when they're driving because kids are walking to school, they're crossing streets, there are buses stopping. We all relax a little bit during the summer, even if we have tourists here. And then we've got many, many students that are getting to school. So everyone, please be aware out there.
Very good reminder. Thank you, Councilor Jones. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll pass.
Right. And Councilor Anderson.
Yes, thanks so much, Madam Mayor. I'm going to pull up my screen here. I've got about 3 pages of AI-generated comments that I'm going to read from, so just bear with me here real quick. I'm totally joking. So I tried a little levity into all of this. So yes, thanks everyone for your comments and the work that we have done. I know I took comments for when we talked about the budget to thank the finance staff, Mr. Bickle, but I voted to not freeze wages on the city employees because the city employees are our greatest asset and they are also our constituents. And just as Mr. Bickle could, and Ms. Griffin and everyone else could be making more money in the private sector, and they chose to give their time and their talents to serve the citizens of Missoula and us. I think that can be said for almost everyone at every level of the government, city government. We have people who put their lives on the line every day, serving our community, people who try to figure out these budgets, people who are answering our questions around, you know, healthcare and computers and potholes and parks. And I mean, just think about all the amazing comments we've heard all summer long about our Parks and Rec department and all of the logistics that have gone to that and the people that have, they are behind all of that. So, they are our constituents. They're also an asset, and they are almost all of them are doing more work than is probably fair, because we are trying to run a lean shop here, and we have so many constraints against us. And so when Mr. Bickle and I were talking about the various budgets things throughout the night, I said, you know, if we were a Fortune 500 company, what size of finance team would we have? What size of budget team would we have? What sort of software would we have to, you know, find some of these mistakes? And he just laughed at me because it's just so unfathomable from what that we are able to do here. So I just want to thank all the staff who are employed at the city of Missoula for all the work that they do, seen and unseen around the budget, just doing the service of all the work, serving Missoulians. And so just wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge all of them, because they probably don't get thanked enough. So thanks. That's it.
Really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. Thank you all for your comments. That wraps up our general comments from council members. And I will remind folks that it is Roots Fest this week. So if you get out and enjoy downtown, have a great time and be safe. Thank you all very much. And we are adjourned.